across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, thank you to Alex. She's back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Welcome to the home of common sense. Yeah, I've got to say it again, haven't I? It's a hot one out there. Yeah, the weather, you know, coming into the summer and stuff, and the sun shines and it's tasty out there. It's beautiful. And, of course, this all happens as Chancellor Rachel Reeves is facing calls for a permanent VAT cut for hospitality, despite securing a £1.8 billion package of temporary reductions. Unveiled on Thursday to ease the cost of living crisis after the Iran war. The measures include cutting VAT on visitor attractions and children's meals this summer. What a Tesco people would say every little helps, but hardly really touches the sides, does it? Is Britain's cost of living crisis permanent? Simple question. Also this afternoon, detectives investigating Andrew Mountbatten Windsor could be looking at allegations of sexual misconduct as part of their inquiry into potential misconduct in a public office. We'll have details on that too. And Britain is preparing for a bank holiday heatwave with amber alerts now in effect across large parts of the country. The Met Office forecast that temperatures could hit 33 Celsius in southern England and the Midlands. I'd normally go, bring it on, but I will actually be painting my son's bedroom. Yeah. I know what you're thinking. Can't you hire someone to do it? No, it's quite a nice thing to paint your kid's bedroom. Well, Ron the painter's helping me, all right? I'll tell you that much. So, but it's going to be a beauty out there wherever you are. It ain't going to be bad, I can tell you that much. We'll bring you everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. You can drop us a voice note there as well. And, of course, you can message on 87222. Lots to get through. Now, if you thought that life was a bit rough right now, I'm here to tell you, don't panic. Why? Because Boomerang Rach is back in town.
I can today announce a temporary cut in the rate of VAT on summer attractions from 20% to 5% over the summer holidays. This will apply to ticket prices for both adults and children, covering attractions such as fairs, theme parks, zoos and museums. It will include children's tickets for cinemas, concerts, soft play and the theatre. And it will cut the cost of children's meals in restaurants and cafes from 20% VAT to 5% as well.
Soft play in the theatre? Mummy, did you get us phantom tickets? Yes, darling. They're reduced. They're only £7,850 now. Wow, it's all right. Rachel Reeves stands there promising salvation, of course, from the cost of living crisis. Free buses, discounted theme park tickets, as though Britain's biggest problem is the unaffordable queue for a log flume. That seems to be the message. Brilliant stuff, because when families are staring at energy bills that look more like ransom notes and council tax rises that arrive with the warmth of a parking ticket, what you really need is £2 off a roller coaster ride. Quids in, everybody. This is modern politics. Treat structural economic collapse like a customer loyalty scheme. Can you eat your home? Here's a half-price entry to Alton Towers. It's insults dressed up as compassion. People do not want gimmicks. They want clarity. I mean, if you teach people how energy pricing works, explain standing charges, show them why council tax keeps rising while services disappear, give financial education in schools and community centres instead of pretending a subsidised bus ride is economic reform, because it isn't. And this is where we're at. I have to say, the Prime Minister says it's the most important thing on his agenda.
For so many people, the cost of living is the number one issue, whether they feel better off, whether they can make ends meet. And that really matters to me. It matters to this government.
Yeah, well, not quite enough to do something about it, it seems. The bigger question that nobody really wants to ask is Britain's cost of living crisis permanent? We just got to get used to the idea, because if wages permanently lag behind housing, food and utilities, then there isn't a crisis anymore. There's a business model, because that's what we're looking at here. A serious government would tackle housing supply, energy dependency, taxation complexity, stagnant wages, but that requires courage, Discounted fairground rides just require a press release. And that's what we got yesterday. The wider question, the cost of living crisis. I know I've banged on about this before. Many people, and I have it in my own family, have always been in a cost of living crisis. When I grew up, so as a child of the 70s, and getting into those kind of years when you were a bit more aware of stuff, in the 80s, there was always a cost of living crisis, and there was not really anywhere to go. Now, I know they're not complete equivalencies in terms of that era versus this era. The needs, the expectations, everything has kind of changed. You know, stuff that's there that you look at now and think, well, the Netflix has gone up. I mean, that clearly wasn't an issue back in 1987. So the stuff like, so the differences, but I think the point is, in terms of people and how we deal with it, but back then people just dealt with it. Most people, by the way, and there was no assistance. I mean, if you were working, because my dad would have been working, there wasn't any, therefore there was no help. You couldn't say, well, we're just short of money. Now, of course, tax credits and all manner of things came along. And I remember my sister, who's older than me, and her kids when they were young, and tax credits came in. I think it was Gordon Brown, wasn't it, that introduced these? And she said one day she's got a letter saying, oh, you've got some money coming to you. She didn't even ask for it. She needed it. It was great that it was there. Of course, it was a nice help, but she would have carried on regardless. Everything is more expensive, and I cannot see a single plan, and I would apply this pretty much to all political parties, that could look at this and seismically change the T's and C's around costs of living. I cannot envisage, I've heard nothing that someone's going to go, don't worry, this is the answer. This is what we're going to do. I can see a lot of politicians and parties out there with a big bucket of plaster ready to go over the cracks. I can see parties promising to rob a bit of Peter in order to pay Paul. But fundamental change that will really slice the cost of living, because it is ridiculously expensive. Energy bills are ridiculously expensive. The hike over the years is off the scale. Council tax, ridiculously expensive. And the services you're getting back are not reflective of those rises. If you got charged more for your council tax, but every time you left your house there was a lovely floral display at the end of the road and a new doctor's surgery had been built right next to the new fire station, you might go, well, yes, OK, I can see why my money goes. If it was that, you might be able to get your head around it. But it's not even that. Which begs the question, is Britain's cost of living crisis permanent? Have we just got to literally rethink, recalibrate everything we thought about? Because we're almost waiting to get through a period, aren't we? That's how, we're addressing the cost of living crisis. If it had a different name, maybe we'd feel different about it. If it had no name at all, perhaps we wouldn't notice it. I don't know. But certainly at the moment, politicians telling you, we're on your side, we're battling to do this. If you take, I said this yesterday, if you take advantage of some free bus fares in the sun. This is just during the holidays, by the way. It's not a permanent thing. And even if they did the food thing, which they've now rowed back on, so your bread, instead of being £1, is going to be 95p. If you add it all together, you'd be lucky to come to the grand total, and you went to Alton Park a couple of times over the holidays, you might find yourself £50 better off. You might. Families are £6,000 to £10,000 in need of solving their cost of living crisis. So none of this is going to touch, absolutely none of it is going to touch the sides. So who do you trust? Politically, who do you trust? Is there a party that you go, do you know what? I actually think they have got a plan. Don't agree with everything. I think they've got a plan that will work. Because this is fundamental change. This is someone who's got a real idea, an ideologically constructed belief that could seriously address a huge problem. 0344 499 1000. That is where you will find us. Our lines are open. Let's get a word on this. Oscar Redrop back with us, former number 10 advisor. Oscar, afternoon to you. It's a lovely, happy day out there, but of course, the economy at the moment is anything but content. It's wobbling around, doesn't know where it's going. Nobody seems to have an answer, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are telling us, you know, they've got our backs, don't worry, because it's going to be 50p cheaper to hook a plastic duck at Legoland or whatever the hell they're giving a discount on today. That's as far as they've got with this. It's not really going to touch the sides.
It isn't going to touch the sides. It's hard to add a lot to your kind of opening there, because I think you completely hit the nail on the head on so many of the issues that face people in their day-to-day lives. Zooming in, the politics of it, this is a number 10 and a number 11 that are absolutely beyond backs against the wall and are scrabbling around down the back of the sofa trying to find anything to try and turn the tide, even by a few millimeters in their favor, in spite of the pressures around them from, Burnham and Wes and all the stuff that we're very well versed on. If we zoom out a little bit, I remember just after Boris and just after COVID, when that cost of living language, of course, there's always been, as you hinted at, cost of living challenges since probably the dawn of time in many ways. But when it really started to filter through as a phrase because of COVID, and ultimately because of COVID, the economy stood still, and we paid people, what was it 80% of people's salaries to stay at home and do nothing. That seismic shock to an economy is unprecedented. And we discussed at the time even having COVID-like daily or weekly press conferences where we would track the cost of living and the work we were doing to address it. It was seen as that much. Yes, we got the pandemic passed, but the economic pandemic was very much still in play and on the horizon, and we have not recovered really as a country since. You talk about the big ideas and the big bold ideas. I think it's quite simple, maybe. And I would have been far more, if Rishi and Jeremy Hunt were still around, I would be far more trusting that we'd be in a better place than we are now with Starmer and Reeves. Ultimately, if we allow working people, and I don't mean it in the cringy Keir Starmer way, I mean literally people who actually go and work, and that can be a business owner, like in a lovely suit like yours, Ian, or it can be a plumber, or it can be someone who works in Tesco's or whatever. Working people, allow them to keep more of their own money. Allow them to make decisions about their life. The government should do far less. And the things that it does do, it should do better. We pay the tax burden that goes into some black hole that, as you again hinted at, we don't see in the NHS. We don't see in our services. It is vast. And people go, oh, well, taxation and, paying in, that's a really lovely kind of, lovely thing. And then what do you get as a result? You get a little summer holiday, a plan, a scheme like this. You get a bit of money off your summer holidays. No. Allow people to keep more of their money through this crisis. That is ultimately the best way through. And just with that, there is a cold element to it, potentially, which is the welfare bill. And that's what this Labour government have never had the bottle to be able to see through. Because you talk about Paul and Peter and, we're going to tax you up to your eyeballs on this, but we will give you a little tax holiday, if you like, on a fairground ride. People who don't pay into the system and do not work, ultimately should not be protected to the extent that they are by those that do. And that sounds cold, but if we realigned that, our economy would be in a much, much better place for working people.
I wonder if what we're going through now is the reality, and what we've had before had been a kind of an over-generous sort of slightly irresponsible system. I'm thinking back to 2008, and of course, the financial crash, and Gordon Brown, who championed himself as some sort of saviour of the global kind of wreck that was out there. But of course, he was the Chancellor for the previous decade who oversaw and so was quite relaxed about the amount of free money that was being lent all over the place. Never gets talked about enough. And I've made this point many, many times. And I remember a caller on it wasn't my own programme, but a fellow that delivers timber, I think it was, to building sites. And he said he got for... The question was, when did you sense there was a kind of crash coming? And he said, I was delivering timber to this new estate, and he said, there's a 4-bedroom house there, detached, you know, standard stuff, but very nice and neat. Big sign outside saying, move in today for 500 quid. And he said, and I thought, there's something not right about this. How could you possibly move into that for 500 quid? And then I remembered, you know, the lollipop lady had a property portfolio. My work experience kid had about 90 grand on credit cards. You could write a mortgage application on the inside of your leg. Money was just given away. We all used to get those credit cards through the door, didn't we, that would say, you know, this is yours now. You know, you haven't even applied for it. It just came and said, there's already 10 grand on it. You think, wow, happy days. And that was the false reality. Is today just the reality? Is that really what was there all the time?
It still doesn't. I get that there was the things that led to the financial, that freedom of credit that led to the crash. I think it is good that we are not in that place now. But at the same time, and I keep coming back to it, Ian, I mean, we don't... Why does a nurse pay, in this country, for example, or a supermarket worker, why do they pay any tax at all?
Correct. Yeah.
Why
civilized. Yeah. You think by this stage of our evolution, we got to the point where that wouldn't be the case.
And I know people go, oh, Liz Truss, you know, and some of the ideas that she had, you know, and look what led to that.
Yeah.
I mean, they were unfunded tax cuts, so I understand why what happened to Liz happened. And I'm not a Liz kind of person at all. That's a very tough record to defend. But it does require, I think, rather than here's a quid off your fairground ride during the summer holidays when you can't put food on the table.
Yeah.
It's almost insulting when a government kind of dangle these things over us for the sake of a press release. Why don't we have a political party that has some ideas around, we're going to abolish all level of taxes for essential key workers, for example?
That would be something.
I think that's the kind of policy I want to see. And I know we can't get into the by-election and blah, 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 blah. But I do fear, what I would say, which people might not like to hear in a way, as bad as Starmer and Reeves are, I do fear what's coming next, because you know the political pressure those two will be under to give the red meat to the Labour Party, which is ultimately even more government spending and even higher taxes. And they're actually resisting that. And so, don't get me wrong, it is a mess, it is a shambles, it is not great, but it could be worse. And what is coming next, post Starmer and Reeves, is going to be worse. Our taxes are going to go up even more.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk in a second, Oscar, about Andy Burnham and what his campaign is really about. Some really interesting kind of mood coming out of the Makerfield by-election campaigning. Stay with us, Oscar. Oscar Redrop with us. He is, of course, former advisor to Boris Johnson when he was Prime Minister over there at number 10. Cost of living, all that goes with it, is such a big subject. There's so many kind of tentacles to this. So what is your angle on it, your take on it as to where we're at? The more you think about it, because we gloss over it because it's said so often, and politicians will address the cost of living crisis, and you think, really, Keir Starmer's going to address the cost of living crisis? Can Kemi Badenoch really do it? Can Nigel Farage really do it? Has Ed Davey got it in him to really do it? Although, as somebody did point out here, Brian said the Lib Dems are loving the theme park VAT reduction. Ed Davey, it'll be straight on the Dodgems. He will. And probably the log flume as well. Loves a bit of that. 0344 499 1000. Your wider points on cost of living and the sort of economic structure, I suppose, of what we've got in this country and how we could change it and what would change it. Not so that it tinkers around the edges, but it makes a seismic difference. Might be a bit uncomfortable for some people for a bit, but would it work? What is the answer on that one? Or is the cost of living crisis permanent? Is it just there all the time? Is this actually the reality? And previously, we were living in a world enveloped by credit. And that was the false reality. This is real. That was the false bit. 0344 499 1000. Lines are open. This is Talk.
conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There's one from Mark in Staffordshire who says, my UK budget, reduce HNS, I think I should meant to be NHS, to a mere 1 million and cancel the visas, send home the redundant, cancel all welfare for foreigners, offer the plane fare for those people, drill baby drill, reduce tax, instant chances for all taxpayers, says Mark in Staffordshire. Sounds completely reasonable. You do wonder, and maybe Oscar can shine some light on this. Oscar Reddrop is still with us, former advisor number 10. All that stuff that you hear all the time, like, well, why don't you just do this? You were there at the epicentre of power when, decisions are being discussed. Where does Boris Johnson, what direction does he take the government in, etc. So you must be used to those. And I'm sure when you're on the inside, they're quite infuriating because the short answer is, well, if we could do that, we would do that. But there's a whole bureaucracy that stands in the way. Is it that, or are some of those simple suggestions not as simple as we all think?
In many ways, those suggestions depressingly are as simple as we all think. But we have got the government, the size of government has grown and grown and grown and grown. It almost is like, you know how AI learns on its own, the more information you feed it and grows and becomes more intelligent. It's like all that 90s film flubber, it has grown a life of its own that no one really has control over. It is entirely fixated on its own obligations and the extent it has grown and the rate it has grown at over the years, that every decision, particularly removing things and trying to untangle it and do less, has become now impossible. Like I'm using lots of imagery here, but kind of a garden weed that is just tangled up this entire nation. And it is going to take someone so brave and so bold and someone who is comfortable with rocky waters for a while to dismantle it and give people freedom. I have to say, like, more of this and more of that is always framed as the compassionate choice with the economy. Let's give people more. Let's allow the government to insert itself here is seen as compassionate. I've never understood that. Is it not more compassionate to allow people to have more control and freedom and charge of their own finances and their own decisions in life without the government continually controlling it? And I think the closer and the more we move in that direction, the more freedom people will feel in their lives. I really, really do.
And I guess when it comes to political decisions, I often think this about Rupert Lowe at Restore. I don't know Rupert, but interviewed him a number of times, and always seems like a fairly amicable chap, and he's got very forthright views, which some people say are not forthright at all. They're just pretty standard stuff. Wants to get rid of 2 million people or something that shouldn't be here. And of course, what's often missing from that, because I can see how that appeals to a certain section of the electorate, and bear with me on this, Oscar, because it does come back to what we're talking about. So let's say Rupert Lowe was Prime Minister, and day one, and he hires every single plane in the country, and everybody that shouldn't be here gets put on that plane. First thing that happens is that 10 pretty powerful economists say, we're not trading with you ever again. So things like that, that's an obvious example, but everything is intertwined, isn't it? And there's one of the issues. It's almost like the system is set up in this way so that nobody ever knows how to kind of solve the overarching problem. People can solve bits of it. You know, much like MI6, where you're allowed that bit of information, and the fella on the desk over there has that bit of info, but nobody has it all. Because that would happen, wouldn't it? Yeah, 2 million people. They did it in 1 week. Hey, Rupert Lowe did exactly what he said. We're all so skint because no one's trading with us. Now, that's just an example, but it's that kind of thing, isn't it? That's the problem. What looks like something that could address, you know, because you'd have 2 million people less dependent on that. That's a significant number, but you might run into other issues.
No, absolutely. Ironically, I think Rupert Lowe on the economy and taxation would be a really brilliant thing for this country. On the other stuff, the stuff that we hear him talk about more in immigration, people listening will go, "Oh, what a Tory wet this Oscar guy is," but it's not my cup of tea at all, and I don't think it is. It's not realistic, and I think that there is a cruelness to it. But on the economy, I mean, my gosh, I think someone like Rupert Lowe would would be brilliant. I mean, he's so in that sense, when I have heard him speak about economic policy, I think, God, that's exactly what we need in this country, to be frank.
Yep.
In terms of how this all filters down to regular people and their livelihoods, I think there is, and I know it's like sounds like, you know, PR rubbish, blah blah blah, but I still don't think a political party has really made the argument for why it is compassionate and the right thing to do and the progressive, noble thing to do to slash the state, slash taxation. You know, I just don't get why the left and their growing of the government and more spending is always seen as the admirable, noble thing to do and just thing to do. It doesn't make sense.
Indeed. Well, as you rightly say, and we talk so much, Oscar, which is always delightful, but we never got around to talking about Andy Burnham. But we will, don't worry. It'll be back on the agenda every day for the next few weeks. Oscar, thank you for your time. Have a cracking weekend. Enjoy the sun, have a beer and relax. Oscar Reddrop with us on the programme, former advisor to Boris Johnson when he was Prime Minister at Number 10. Thank you to him. 0344 499 1000. Is Britain's cost of living crisis permanent? And all the other kind of elements and splinters that come from that subject. It's deeply fascinating. It affects everyone at different levels. Love your views on that number. Some breaking news. 7 men have been charged with dozens of offences, including rape, as part of an investigation into group-based child sexual exploitation. I'll come back to this story in just a second. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I was in the middle of some pretty serious breaking news when, the cough kicked in. Apologies. The story I was about to bring you was this. 7 men have been charged with dozens of offences, including rape, as part of an investigation into group-based child sex exploitation. The men, who police say are Afghan nationals and refugees, are accused of sexual offences committed between August 2023 and May 2025. They're due to appear at Norwich Magistrates Court today. Officers raided 6 addresses in Norwich on Wednesday morning and 1 in Dumbarton in Scotland, arresting 7 men. Another man was arrested in Ireland on Friday morning. The charges relate to 2 victims who were aged in their early to mid-teens at the time of the alleged offences. This is according to Norfolk Police. They added that none of the suspects charged had lived in asylum hotels in Norfolk, and none of the offending in these offences happened in asylum hotels. Obviously, we can't discuss this because charges have been introduced to this story, but that is the breaking news from Norwich, from Norfolk Police. 0344 499 1000. This comes from Steve. Back to the cost of living. He says, it's just occurred to me that Rachel Reeves' policies have all been devised around the kitchen table with her kids. Free school meals, cheap kids meals, free school bus fares, discounts on children going to the zoo. All childish offers that don't address growth. Constant Robin Hood Ponzi economics. Yeah. It's almost like she sat around the breakfast table and looked at all those offers that you get on the back of a packet of Sugar Puffs. Free trip to Orton Towers. One of those. Oh, that's a good idea. What if we could do that on a grander scale? Doesn't really touch the sides, does it? Rachel Reeves has, of course, introduced this temporary £1.8 billion package of VAT reductions for the hospitality sector, but a key question remains. Is this measure truly what the public desires? Does it really go? I mean, I think people look at their energy bills before they're picking a ride on a roller coaster. Danny Houston is head of financial analysis at AJ Bell. Danny, good afternoon to you. Look, it's the old question, is it? If you ask, a load of economists, what's the best way to solve the economy? How do we get out of this? You get 107 answers, and that's just with 3 of them in the room. So I know there's the one-size-fits-all thing. Are we in an era, however, though, Danny, where we have to say that it's, Labour come in, Tories come in, Labour, Tory, etc. They tinker around a bit. There's only X amount of money there. How you spend it is kind of largely up to the government. There are some irredeemables in there, health and police cars and all of that, although they're not immune from, being looked at financially. But broadly speaking, not a whole load of things changes. I don't think anyone with a straight face could say our entire financial system has changed in the last 20 or 30 years. We've had bumps in the road. But does it need that? Do we need a big, almost a shock to the system to get us started again? Because we're asking the question, is the cost of living crisis actually permanent? And I do wonder, Danny, whether what we're living through now, sorry, this is a long question. I wonder what we're living through now is actually the reality. What we had before was a sort of false existence of finance.
I think definitely the big issue for all governments is that when they try and put something into place, there's only a limited amount of time that they're usually in power before they lose power and somebody else comes in and tries to do something else. And maybe you were just starting to see the benefit of some of those changes come in before you started to see a change. I think anybody that has lived through the past couple of years will say that they feel much worse off than they did before. But you just go back to the financial crisis, 2008, 2009, lots of people, for them, that would have been the most difficult period of time. It depends where you sit at the moment in terms of how much money you've got coming into your household and therefore how you're affected by this.
Do you remember, Danny, I can't remember who the governor of the Bank of England was back then. Was it Eddie George or somebody of that nature? But they said at the time, 2008, that whoever gets, I remember them saying whoever gets in power in 2010 will be out of power eventually for a long period of time. But they were making the point that what we're about to go through isn't something that's going to be solved in a parliament or two. This is perhaps a couple of generations of problem.
Yeah, there were an awful lot of measures put in place off the back of the financial crisis, which did really impact, banks. If you think about some of the changes that Rachel Reeves is just bringing through now, that is all designed to try and spur lending again. But if you've got interest rates going up and you've already got companies which are, in some cases, zombie companies, so saddled with a huge amount of debt that they're struggling to pay, then this next couple of years could be the death knell for them. We've certainly seen a lot of retail and hospitality businesses over the past few months, unfortunately, closing their doors, and that means job cuts. I think one of the biggest issues that we're looking at over the next year or so is we've experienced a cost of living crisis. We saw inflation go really uncomfortably high, and we're not expecting it to go quite that high. But during that period of time, the labour market was also really strong. So it meant people had power when they went to their employers and said, I'm really struggling with the cost of living. They could persuade them to give them a bit more money in their pay packet. Now, one of the reasons that we've got the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee, Alan Taylor was talking about this yesterday, saying he didn't expect the secondary effects of inflation to sort of filter through as much this time, because he didn't expect that employers would feel the need to give such big pay increases because we've got such a lot of unemployment.
It's just a bit annoying, isn't it, that, as I said at the beginning, it's not like the world of medicine. If you ask a professor to look in a microscope and say, is that a tumour? They'd go, yeah, it's a tumour. One wouldn't suddenly come along and go, no, that's a 50p piece. Everybody would say, that's a tumour. They're all pretty much in agreement. But, you ask those that work in finance, what is the best way to solve this problem? How do we recalibrate, rewire the economy so that it kind of ticks along rather well? Then the amount of answers are so plentiful. It's hard. You'd think there would be one go-to model that we do. That's it, that one there. Let's all do that, and then we're all sorted. But it doesn't quite work like that.
It doesn't, and I think the Labour Party actually had it bang on the nose when it said we need to make growth our priority, because a growing economy is an economy that means you're going to get paid a little bit more, that you're going to have a bit more money in your pocket to spend in the local shop, so the local shop is going to feel that it can employ more people, and that sort of cycle goes on and on and on. But of course you cannot account for those external things like what is going on in the Middle East, which is putting up the cost of our petrol once again. So, some of it you could say, stability, longevity, the time just to allow some of these measures which are brought in to bed in, but also some of them might not be able to do what they've been brought in to do because they're also having to deal with what's going on in the Middle East and with Trumpflation.
Absolutely right. Danny, thank you. Great to have you with us. Danny Hewson, Head of Financial Analysis at AJ Bell. Of course, you can protect yourself a bit. And if 20 years ago, I don't know, David Cameron, Gordon Brown, Blair, whoever, had gone, do you know what? When it comes to energy, we need to be self-sufficient. So those little, those small kind of almost satellite nuclear power stations, not the big deal, but that type of thing. Let's get, 100 of those around the country, get this thing running. But nobody did. And so we were reliant on, the French were doing more with nuclear power in this country than we were. And I think that is possibly still the case today. So we're, even on that front, because we could sit here today and say, well, Strait of Hormuz, Strait of Hormuz, does it really matter to us? Doesn't make a blind bit of difference when it comes to energy. We've got our own. Emma Revel is External Affairs Director at the Centre for Policy Studies. Emma, afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. Again, as I was saying to Danny there a second ago, everybody's got their own sort of idea, haven't they, about what we should be doing. There must be some fundamentals, some obvious gears that can be shifted and changed that would instantly make a difference. But at the moment, we still sit in this sort of Labour Tory thing, or the Tories will do this, they'll have less public spending. I mean, it's quite a joke, really, as you know. You look back, when the Tories were accused of, not slashing public spending. I think the last Tory 40 years spent more on public services than any government in history. They were at it all the time, just did it in a different way, of course. Is there, as far as you can see, what is going on in terms of our economy, and is there a way out of it that no one so far has thought about?
The problem is when you look at things like the economy, you have ideology in play. You have some people who believe that the state is better placed to direct certain sectors, to direct a lot of public spending in certain places, and you have other people who have fundamentally different views about the nature of the state, and they think that actually business and organizations can broadly decide for themselves and meet customer needs. So, the comparison you made a few minutes ago about doctors looking at a tumor and going, well, yeah, that's what it is. There's no ideology at play there. They're just looking at the evidence. And that isn't true when you're looking at things like the economy. Yeah. I think, unfortunately, what there is a lot of agreement on the things that will work. They're just really hard. They're things that decisions that need to be taken over the long term. They require a lot of planning, a lot of investment, and a lot of stability. And I think if you look at, the UK government, which party was in power, out of the question. You look at the last, say, 20 years, and it's hard to see. There's been no stretch of a prime minister who comes into power at a general election and who wins the next general election and then leaves office. That just hasn't happened. We've been deposing, we've been replacing leaders, we've had elections quicker than we ordinarily would have. And this is, looks like it might be happening again. And what that means is no government has had the stretch of time that you need to take difficult decisions and to do hard things.
And you kind of wonder, because this government could well be, reaching its end as well before it's hardly got off the ground. I think it never got off the ground, and I'm not sure it ever will. And they're clearly about to change their leader at some point in at least the next 4 months. So we'll have this sort of strange dance all over again, won't we? Because even within parties, we've got Andy Burnham today sort of talking about how, he's going to get back to some sort of true Labour values. And, these are sort of platitudes. They don't really mean very much. They sound all tough when you're on the stumps, but they don't mean much other than muck the whole thing up again.
Well, yeah, the sort of things that Andy Burnham has been announcing. He's talked about nationalising railways again today. I think it's important that someone tells him he's running in a by-election and that the MP for Makerfield doesn't actually have the power to nationalise the trains. But clearly he's thinking that this campaign's won and he can move on to the next one before he's even in Parliament. But, it is frustrating that we're going to have what looks like another leadership challenge, whether Andy Burnham's in it and wins it in the end or not, because it means that what the government is able to do is the kind of small things that we've been talking about, a small cut in VAT, which will undoubtedly help some families over the summer. You've got kids off school, you've got childcare costs, you've got to work out what to do with them so that they don't go mad sat in the house for 6 weeks. It will help some people in the short term, but it's so small and so minor in comparison to the vast scale of the economic challenge that we face. And the government just does not have the time, the space, the energy or the inclination to do anything about it, because they're caught up in whether, Keir Starmer's going to be deposed by Andy Burnham or Streeting or Angela Rayner. That's what's taking all the oxygen out.
Bang on. Emma, great to see you again. Thank you for your time. Emma Revel, External Affairs Director of the Centre for Policy Studies. Over to more of your comments. Paul says, so Starmer is going to campaign with Burnham. Can you imagine those two knocking on your door? It'd be like getting a visit from Ronnie and Richie. Would a bit, wouldn't it? Hello. Jeff says, afternoon, Ian. Tax is good for everyone. However, we have to see a bang for our buck, says Jeff. Yeah, it's that, isn't it? I don't think anybody... We all understand, we all love to live in a world, sort of Dubai style, where you don't pay any tax. Of course, you pay for lots of other things in a far more expensive way. But, yeah, that should be our aim. We get it. We understand tax. But you need to sort of seek the evidence. And when you see it splashed up the wall in so many different ways, and politicians keep telling you they're has the system got too big? You know, even think of the politician that you don't like, you really hate. You know, it could be somebody in this current government. In fact, it probably is somebody in this current government. None of them go to bed at night going, hey, how can we wreck the economy? They all go to bed going, what can we do to make this better? And obviously, they've got to put their own kind of DNA onto whatever initiative they have. But what can we literally do to make this better? What would firestart the economy, or at least begin the green shoots of recovery and all that old guff? They surely want to do the same. They all want to do the same thing, but nobody can do it. And it leaves me with the kind of slightly unfortunate question of, is the cost of living crisis permanent? Well, we'll stop calling it the cost of living crisis. This is just the cost of living. It's not a crisis, it's the reality. Is this it? Is this how it is? It's going to be expensive. There's nothing to suggest it's going to go down anytime soon, and the best our Chancellor can do is give you a 10% discount on a roller coaster at Alton Towers, or a free bus ride for your kids. 0344 499 1000. Thoughts on all of that? Lines are open. This is Talk.
Conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Joanna in Salisbury says, Rachel Reeves' idea that you have to spend money to save money on an attraction, if you can afford the fuel to get there, is insane. If you gave working parents a tax reduction on their income, they could choose to go where they like a free day out, a local river, or to the beach. That money would go further and would help with the fuel costs. And of course, I mean, the beaches this weekend will be absolutely I wouldn't want to be sitting on a beach in these temps. I wouldn't sit on a beach in Spain or anywhere. If it's going to get up to 30-odd degrees. It's just uncomfortable. And of course, a British beach, as beautiful as they are, I think beaches look best in winter sometimes. Because in the, well, you know, there's something quite, what's the word? Melancholy, that's the word. It's not like depressing, there's something quite bleak but attractive about a gusty, windy beach. In the summer, Brits crammed on Margate Beach is one of the saddest sights I think I can conjure up in my head. There's Nam with her varicose veins. There's usually a manky dog sitting there as well. Someone's got some fish and chips. A seagull's gone nuts with your sausage. All manner of stuff's going on. Someone has some ill-fitting Speedos. Your sister's disappeared because she fancies a fella she met from Cleethorpes down the beach. You know, that kind of thing. It's not a pretty sight down on the beach. But it's free, right? It's free. I think it's largely part of the point Joanna was making. It's free. Going to the park is free. And some great parks in this country. Whether they're parks as in play parks, you know, slides and swings, or whether they're National Trusty kind of parks, there's so much you can do. If you want to go to Alton Towers or Legoland, I've done Legoland a couple of times. There's a fella outside, money lending before you go in, because you sometimes need it. By the way, just in case the Merlin lawyers are listening, there isn't really. I'm making the point that any big day out at a theme park in this country costs a lot of money, even if you get a discount. Tony in Bournemouth. Tony, what have you got for us? Hello.
Hello, it's funny you should say that, because as it happens, I'm sat on full key at the moment, eating chips.
Are you really?
Trying to keep the seagulls off them.
The Bournemouth seagull is a beast.
Oh, I got one here. He's got 1 foot. I've seen him before. He's only got 1 foot.
Really?
Pops about. Yeah. Long John Silver, I call him.
What?
Yeah.
So the one-footed seagull doesn't stop them, though, does it? They don't care what's missing from their anatomy. They'll still.
No, it's still there. Yeah, but
you sure that's not a flamingo you're talking about, Tony?
No. I know what
foot's behind the other one. You know, that optical illusion thing that flamingos do so well.
No. Anyway, I found out about the cost of living.
Yes.
And back in the 70s, I used to work on the buses, and it was corporation, yellow buses, Bournemouth, which are sadly now gone. But it was corporation, so I had a council house.
Yep.
And my rent and rates in those days, it was rates, not council tax, it was rates. But that included your water rate as well.
Okay.
And that came to 1/6 of my income.
Right? 1/6 of your income. Wow. Your rent, so that's essentially your rent and your council tax and your water.
And your water rates, right?
Yeah.
And when I finished work on the car parks, I worked for NCP on the car parks, the rent, a couple of years back, I'm retired now, the rent and my rates came to just over half of my income. Now, that's the difference, you see.
That is literally the difference. Now, why would that... I mean, we'd need an economist to sit here, I suppose, Tony, but why would that be? Why is it not all kind of just increased, proportionately?
Yeah, well, it hasn't, has it? You know, I mean,
definitely not.
A hell of a difference, isn't it?
Definitely not. Well, I always make this point. When my sister left school, she went to work in an office as like a kind of clerical assistant. You know, she was never, she never sort of PA or anything like that. And a boyfriend was a forklift truck driver at the same place. He worked in the factory, she worked in the office. And when they were about 20, they got married and bought a house. Two people doing those two jobs today could never buy a house for the rest of their life.
Well, my mate was on the buses. He was a bus driver. His wife was a store detective at Woolworths, which has sadly gone now, right?
Yeah. What? Not the wife, the store detective. Yeah.
He did loads of overtime, him and his wife, for 12 weeks. And they got a deposit on a brand new house in Bournemouth.
Fantastic.
I mean, a house in Bournemouth now would cost you £500,000, right?
Yeah.
And they managed to do it. And there was a bus driver and a store detective.
You see, you can't. Yeah. They're the...
the only difference was, I mean, like things like tech, like TVs and videos, now they cost a fortune back in the day.
That's right. Yeah. You can buy buy a TV for 50 quid now.
People rented them. You got Granada and Red Fusion. They couldn't afford to buy them.
Radio rentals, remember them?
All that. Yeah. But now, I mean, you can get a 50-inch telly for 300.
What was the do you remember Rumblos?
Rumblos, yeah. I remember all them. Yeah.
I used to love going in that shop. I don't know when I was a kid. It's like, wow, they've got these things called video recorders. We never had one of those for about a decade.
That isn't the cost of living, is it? A TV on a video is not the cost of living.
No.
The cost of living is your rent, your water, your gas.
Yeah, it's all of that.
Petrol.
So it's gone up disproportionately. So it's not as if it's not as if that's really any great shock. We know that, but what we don't know is why that is. Why has it had to increase? Why has like there's some bricks and mortar. It's a house. It's the same house 50 years later, but it will take half of your wages to rent it, and 30, 40 years before, it only took a sixth of your wages.
That's right. Yeah. But, you know, that's the way it's gone, isn't it? And that's why people are hard up now. It doesn't matter if you're earning, you know, you can be earning 50,000 a year. You're still hard up.
Everything is kind of relative in that respect. Listen, Tony, I'm going to let you keep your legs dangling over the pier with your chips. Watch out for that one-legged seagull, though, because that's clearly the menace of all beasts down there at Bournemouth. Tony, thank you, mate. Have a great afternoon. The sun is shining. Mark in Norfolk says, Ian, tinkering with the odd pound here and there is meaningless. We need two things: incentivise and reward business growth. Spot on. Scrap stamp duty. Spot on. Those two things were, I mean, if you scrap stamp duty, there'd be a field day in the property market, I promise you. Everything else is sheer tokenism and worse, patronising. Also spot on as well. Yes, don't worry. Here's a free bus ride for your kids for 8 weeks. Not all of your kids, just some of your kids. Not all journeys, but it can't go anywhere. Just some routes. You might have to pay for another bus to get to the place that the bus you want actually goes from. And will it go to the place you want to go to anyway? 0344 499 1000. Loads more comments still to come. Is Britain's cost of living crisis permanent? Let's get the news now. It's 2 o'clock.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We're talking about the cost of living crisis. Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome back. Home of Common Sense. It's the Afternoon Empire. Rachel Reeves facing calls for a permanent cut in VAT for hospitality. She's doing this sort of tinkering around the edges thing, saying, I'll give you a free bus pass and it'll be a big discount if you're going to Legoland or whatever. But we need much more than that. We are forced to wonder, given these kind of daft initiatives that really don't touch the sides, is Britain's cost of living crisis permanent? What is your overarching take on it? And what could happen in order to make things better, if anything at all? Also this afternoon, detectives investigating Andrew Mountbatten Windsor could be looking at allegations of sexual misconduct as part of their inquiry. We'll have more on that story. And Britain is preparing for a bank holiday heat wave. There are amber alerts out there right now across large parts of the country. And the Met Office forecast that temperatures could hit 33 degrees in southern England and the Midlands. Although looking at the weather map, doesn't matter where you are, it's going to be a bit tasty out there. Perhaps even a little too hot. 0344 499 1000. Rob Ward says, people won't trade with us if we return illegal migrants. What trade do we do with Afghanistan, Somalia, Eritrea, Iraq, etc.? No, you missed the point, Rob. It won't be those countries that won't trade with us. It'll be France, Germany, Spain. They'll say, we're not touching the UK. Look what they've done. They've breached human rights. That would be a potential knock-on effect. You would create this. This is what I was saying. I'm not defending this, by the way, but the way the system is kind of constructed. So whatever bit you touch has a knock-on effect. I know everything, law of physics and all that. If a butterfly dies or whatever it is, flies off, a Tasmanian devil dies on the other side of it, that kind of thing. Even notwithstanding the obvious, there are clear interwoven policies, deliberate or otherwise, that mean that it's quite hard to make robust policy decisions without there being a huge knock-on effect somewhere else. And that seems to be the problem. I was giving the example of, if Rupert Lowe kicked out 2 million people, there would, apart from the financial implications of that, the impossibility of being able to do it in anything like less than about 20 years because of the amount of people involved and the legal cases. So there'd be the cost, there'd be the rigmarole, but there would arguably be other effects to that. And you would have other countries condemning the United Kingdom, saying, right, we don't agree with doing business this way, so we don't do any business with you. You can almost see that coming round the corner a mile off. Now, that's not to suggest people don't make bold decisions just because of uncomfortable effects elsewhere. And maybe that's what's wrong with the system. The reason we never get anything done, because nobody will make those bold decisions because of the aforementioned knock-on effects. Man alive, it's complex, but it doesn't need to be, for goodness sake. Now, in a direct challenge to Sir Keir Starmer, Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham is positioning his campaign for the Makerfield by-election as a vote to change Labour. Let's have a listen to Andy Burnham.
I've not done the traditional by-election thing in front of you today. We're brilliant and this party's terrible and that party's this, and I've not done that. I've talked about what I believe, where I'm from, the values that shape me and what I'm going to do. That's what I've focused on. And that's what I think we need to do so much more of. And why have I done that? Because I know my own party needs to change. We need to be better than we've been. We've not been good enough. And I want to leave people in no doubt today. A vote for me in this by-election campaign is a vote to change Labour. It is a vote.
Andy Burnham speaking today. Let's speak with Paul Richards, former Labour Special Advisor. Paul, I mean, it's no secret, of course, Mr Burnham is on manoeuvres, but that was not a constituency speech. That was a pitch to be the Prime Minister, right?
I think it's a little bit of both. He has to get himself elected first, and as you've been talking about, that's not a done deal, is it? It's not sort of massive, shoe-in for him in Makerfield. I did note from the footage there, by the way, and he had the chief whip over his shoulder, glowering as he was making his speech. I don't know if you noticed Johnny Reynolds there.
Johnny Reynolds was in the house, yes.
So I don't know whether he'll be getting a rap on the knuckles for that sort of language. But look, what he has to achieve here is the amazing feat of winning this by-election in the middle of a parliament where Labour's desperately unpopular and has just lost the by-election to the Greens, of all people, for heaven's sake. And then he's got to come into parliament and he's got to get 81 of his colleagues to nominate him to trigger a by-election, trigger a leadership election, because of course we haven't got a leadership contest at the moment. True. I know you would think that we have, but we don't. Yeah. Starmer's still there getting on with the day job, so he's got a few hurdles to go. But anyway, his shtick has got to be, yes, I'll be your local MP, hard-working from here up the north and all that. But when he gets down to London again, it'd be interesting to see what he does next in terms of leadership bids or anything else.
Is it quite hard, though, for somebody in Andy Burnham's position, in this sort of not completely unique, but almost unique position. I think Boris Johnson was in a similar place when you have a mayor's job and then you're kind of transferring to a constituency job, but you're also telling that constituency, once I get the job, you won't see me very much because I'm going to leg it for number 10.
Well, this is the Reform candidate's argument is exactly that. He's saying it's not a stepping stone; it's my home, and he's going to make the argument. Look, you need a local champion, local MP, somebody born here, and Burnham's going to say, look. You know, if you elect me, I'll be the MP, of course, but you may get a prime minister as well. And the voters are going to have to break one way or the other, whether they want a sort of a celebrity MP who may be going places, you know, be a proper national figure, international figure, or somebody who does the local work and surgeries and you see in Tesco, you know. And I think voters, it's impossible to tell. I mean, the Boris example is a good one. You know, he obviously was somebody that people quite like that celebrity aspect of. And the fact he was somebody who wanted to be PM, obviously did appeal to some people. But coming to it from a mayoralty is unusual in our system because these elected mayors are a relatively recent constitutional change. We haven't really seen an awful lot of this yet, unlike other countries like France, for example. So, you know, there'll be a few more of these down the line, I'm sure. But for now, it is a bit of a novelty.
Indeed, it is. And, you know, it's fascinating in the sense that from the very beginning, when the local MP decided, I mean, what a benevolent chap to surrender his livelihood.
Big-hearted Josh, we call him.
Big-hearted Josh decided that he would surrender his ability to feed his own family and give up a job. I mean, who does that, for goodness sake? It's almost like somebody might have said, you know, there's something in it for you if you do this well.
Yes, the future Lord Simons of Makerfield, I suspect.
That's exactly the one. But even so, I mean, that would... You know, I was talking to some people the other day about it, just some mates of mine who are not massively political, but they just said, you know, I'd be a bit annoyed if that was my local MP, the person I voted for. That's fair, isn't it?
It's absolutely fair. And this is part of Burnham's bold gamble. I mean, it's a fascinating moment. You know, if this comes off, we'll be talking about this for years to come. But he's making that gamble that he can persuade people in the circumstance of a very clear manipulation of the situation, you know, and do people mind that, or do they feel like they've been treated for mugs? You know, we'll find out in the by-election on Thursday in a few weeks' time. But you know, it is a huge gamble of Andy Burnham. So this is his last final chance to do the thing he's wanted to do. He's tried, don't forget, to be Labour leader twice already and not got elected. So you know, different times to be fair. But it's a massive gamble. Does fortune favour the brave or not? You know, that's what we're going to find out. And of course, if he's not elected, then we've got this ridiculous situation in the Labour Party of Wes Streeting say he's going to stand, Starmer says he's going to stand. Are we then going to get a contest between two or three of the existing names without Burnham, because he won't be an MP, and Starmer might win that, so we'd just be back to a square one, no further ahead after 6 months of internecine warfare. So not a great look for the Labour Party, I would personally argue.
Yeah, it's quite tricky, isn't it? And looking at those opinion polls, Paul, they do sort of differ a little bit. 1 minute I'm sort of reading, you know, Reform could quite seriously do this, that, you know, their candidate is pretty pure in the sense that he couldn't be more local. He's a plumber. He's like ticking a lot of boxes there. Burnham, of course, you know, he's also, you know, a fairly earthy guy from humble beginnings, and you know, not directly from Makerville, but round the corner, to coin a phrase. So and if anybody could do it, Burnham could do it, but it's not a done deal.
Yeah, I mean, he's somebody who, obviously, Andy Burnham is somebody who's from that neck of the woods. I think his kids went to school in the constituency. He represented Lee, which is the seat next door in Lancashire. People are thinking this is Manchester, by the way. Of course, it's not. I mean, it's Wigan, and it's halfway between Manchester and Liverpool. But it's still, he can play his strong northern credentials, of course. But let's not forget, he's also been a cabinet minister. He was a special advisor. He was a parliamentary researcher, same time as me back in the 90s. So he is somebody steeped in politics and in Westminster and Whitehall, which, in my view, is an advantage if you want to be the Prime Minister. You shouldn't just be coming in having done something else completely and think, oh, you might have a go at being PM. I quite like the idea people have some skill in negotiating Westminster Whitehall, but he can play that northern card. And of course, as mayor, you know, we can have an argument about how well he's done, but I think he's done brilliantly as the Manchester mayor, and I think Manchester is a brilliant place, you know, and partly that is down to his leadership at the civic level. So he can play that card. as well. I'll be going up there on Friday, and I'm going to have a look around and do a bit of campaigning and see what the view is on the ground. You know, whether
campaigning for the reform guy. Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, you wish. Yeah, no, I'll be there backing Andy, and I think as you saw there from the chief whip behind his shoulder, you know, the whole Labour Party is getting behind that.
Even Keir Starmer. I mean, is that not a bit weird? I mean, I appreciate he's sort of. I mean, that's going to be awkward, isn't it?
It is a little bit through the looking glass, isn't it? Where, you know, it would seem that you're going to back the guy who has said pretty clearly he wants to get rid of you and take you out of your job and replace you. So it's the whole thing is weird, isn't it? I mean, I've never known politics quite like this last few months. In the 40 years I've been doing it, you know, so there we are. Through the looking glass.
I absolutely agree. I'm quite impressed by howling Lord Hope from the Monster Raving Loony Party. I mean, this fella, he's a bit of a howler and he's a lord. You know, what's not to like?
Yes, well, by-elections are part of our great tradition, isn't it? They do attract all kinds of folk to come forward, Lord Buckethead and whoever else. Will the Greens stand a candidate, though? I mean, they had a candidate for about 2 hours. It turned out he was somebody who had endorsed all kinds of anti-Jewish conspiracy theories, so they dropped him after a few hours. Yeah. And they haven't got a candidate at the moment, the Greens, so they may not stand at this rate. I mean, they seem to be burning through candidates like nothing on earth.
Yeah,
so,
they really are.
They may not.
I mean, that would be helpful for Andy Burnham, one would have to reasonably surmise.
I mean, they may have to frame it as that, but I mean, actually, it's because their candidate, it turned out, was a wrong one and had written some pretty vile stuff, you know. And the Greens have this ongoing problem with anti-Semitism. A lot of the folks that were in the Labour Party we kicked out have gone into the Greens, and others too. And they keep getting exposed. You know, they just don't do the due diligence on their candidates, and they don't see the things they've said on their socials. And then, of course, under the scrutiny of a by-election, that's the sort of thing that comes out. This guy lasted not even a day, I don't think, did he? The Green candidate. So, I mean, anyway, let's see if they can come up with.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be a Trivial Pursuit question in years to come. What's the longest or the shortest candidate? And it'll be this fella. While you're with us as well, Paul, the headlines scream Rayner embroiled in election fraud row. This happens to be Angela Rayner's neck of the woods. I don't think there's any direct evidence it's anything to do with Angela Rayner, but nonetheless, it's not a good look. 5 people arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to defraud. This was the Tameside council elections, but it's in Rayner's constituency, so therefore that naturally belches out a fairly obvious headline.
Yeah, no, I understand her team have absolutely denied as strongly as they possibly can any sense of knowledge or involvement in this. But the idea is that somebody somewhere, that's what the police are investigating, that deliberately put up a candidate or two to draw votes away from another candidate. So they weren't a proper candidate, but they were there to split the vote to allow someone to get through. As you know, with local elections, the margins are really slight. You know, a few dozen votes either way gets you elected or not. So that's the allegation. It is obviously being investigated, and the police may well bring it to charges and all the rest. So we have to be a little bit careful, but it is against the law to do that. You can't just put somebody up with a similar sounding name to the other guy or the conversative candidate instead of the conservative candidate in the hope that it splits the vote or whatever. You know, our rules are strict, thank heavens, on that kind of thing. So that's what the police are investigating right now.
Indeed. We'll watch with interest how that pans out. Paul, great to have you on with us. Thank you. Paul Richards, he's a former Labour special advisor, knows his beans in all matters Labour related. He's going to campaign for Andy Burnham. I do think the audacious nature of Burnham's move is beyond the pale, frankly. But, you know, he thinks he can do it and he wants to do it because his next step is Prime Minister. These are the other candidates. I might as well tell you who they are. I know we're not in that period yet, but it's helpful. Jake Austin, Liberal Democrats, Andy Burnham, Labour Party, Robert Kenyon, Reform UK, Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain, Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party, and Alan Howling, Lord Hope, the official Monster Raving Loony Party. They're the ones that are standing so far. Paul in Southend says, anyone who sees reform as the answer are dreaming. If they won the next election, Labour and the other parties, plus the civil service, will never allow them to make any meaningful changes. You're always sort of up against that. I mean, if they got a stonking majority, as many reform members and supporters are predicting, they could get it through. They could get it through. In parliamentary terms, they could get it through. They might come across some moody civil servants that would have a problem. But if you really want it to happen, it can happen. But I hear where Paul is coming from. There will be plenty of people around who will put up some big old barriers. 0344 499 1000. More from you on the way. This is Talk.
Conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one from Jeff. It says, afternoon, Ian. Tax is good for everyone. However, we have to... Oh, yeah, I think I read that earlier, but worth highlighting that point again. We have to see a bang for our buck, and of course we do. And that's fine. Reg says, what about the people who don't go away or don't want to go to a theme park? It seems to me that these folk are going to be left out. How is that fair? Don't mention fair. They don't want to go to one of those either. It's a good point, isn't it? The idea that, oh, it's bus rides and theme parks. By the way, when you get, you know, you can go with the best with them. Well, we've done the theme park thing in so many different ways. You go, right, next time we go, we ain't buying anything from them, apart from most of them are going to serve you like the worst food ever. It's always going to be chicken nuggets and chips. but the kind of the El cheapest version of all time. Then there's ice creams. So you go, oh, take a packed lunch. But you take the packed lunch, but then you still buy an ice cream. The ice cream's like a £5. And then there's candy floss, and then there's a gift shop. I mean, they'll get you one way or the other. They're very expensive places to go to. Daniel's in Epsom. Daniel, you're a businessman. You're a fella in charge of your own destiny, and all of that is fantastic. Have you managed to work out the cost of living problem?
Yeah, I have. It's quite simple. You think about your number one asset is your home. So the biggest purchase you'll ever make is your house. We all need somewhere to live. And if you look at the population of this country in the 90s, I think 1997, the population was around 55 million people, okay? Yep. Now it's estimated it's more like 72 million people. But I would... A lot of the people that run the supermarkets, because they can see trends in what people buy, a lot of the people that run the big supermarkets actually think our population's a lot higher than 72 million. So all of a sudden, in quite a short period of time, 26 years, you've added more than a quarter to your actual population, right? And there was no way on God's green earth you were ever going to build that infrastructure. So right now in Britain, the reason that nothing publicly run works is because we've got 72 million people plus trying to use an infrastructure fit for about 50 million people, okay? And that is exactly the problem we've got, and that is exactly why nothing publicly run works. And the roads are congested. The hospitals can't cope. You know, the housing is so expensive. Young people in Britain can't... Give you an example. My nan and granddad got married. They went to Lambeth Council, right? And they said, we just got married. And they said, all right, come back in a few days. They were given keys and a rent book on a brand new estate down the bottom of Croxted Road.
That's crazy, right?
And you think, like, I had trouble getting on the property ladder. I'm 49. This population crisis we've got is exacerbating everything generation on generation. People can't, and because they can't get houses and they're not affordable, you know, people can't have children. They can't start their lives. They're living in their mum's house at like 37, working in home base. We're obliterating their future because the number one thing that you buy is so expensive. And the other reason the cost of living crisis is out of control is because every time the government print money, so in 1997, just so everyone can look it up, we had zero public debt, nada, nothing. We were in the black. Right now we owe £3 trillion, and the government, because they can't face up to the reality of welfare and cutting costs. They just keep printing money, right? Every time you print money with quantitative easing, the money in your pocket and the money in the bank, the value of it goes down, okay? Those two issues are at the heart of all of our problems. And I disagree with you, Ian, about Restore. I'm going to vote Reform because I think they're the best vehicle to get us out of this crisis. But if we did deport 2-3 million people that weren't contributing to the country, that shouldn't be here, I don't think that other countries would say we're not working with them. I think what other countries would do is they'd copy us.
They might do. I don't know whether it would be I don't know whether it's as brutal as we're not working with you ever at all on anything. I can see why there would be an international outcry, though.
Yeah, but that's the answer. The answer is to make people go. Make millions of people that should never have been here, make them go.
But how many would that... I mean, because I know, we're in agreement on most things down on this kind of stuff. And the reservation I always have is that population increase. Yes, obviously you have an immigration portion to that. But is it the greatest portion? I mean, is the greatest portion just people that, populations get bigger? They stop growing for a while, then they, post-war, they absolutely ballooned. That was pre a lot of immigration, of course. There was some, but then, then, of course, we see modern-day immigration. So whatever figure that is it enough to have created the turmoil that you're talking about?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, just from 1997, if you just look at the actual figures, that's 17 million people. I suspect it's more than that. And I think where you start is with the prisons. So anyone who's foreign national in prison, they go first. Then you get rid of every single illegal. That's 1 to 2 million people, apparently. So they go next. And then you start looking at people that were born abroad, on welfare, on benefits, with a social house. Do they actually contribute to this country in any feasible way? If they don't, then they'll have to go, just cut their benefits, and they'll deport themselves. And I think over time, what we would have again is we would have a much more homogenous, safer, less crime country. our young people, the cost of housing would go down because there's less demand, and all of a sudden we reverse it. We get to where we were pre-1997. That's what we have to do to get this country back on track, and we have to be quite militant about it as well. And if we did those things, we could be a successful nation again. But we need bold government to come in, and that's what we've got to do to get our country back.
I like it, Dan. Thank you, as ever. Daniel in Epsom. Of course, you then have to start. Now, you hear what Daniel says. You'd have to go, what do we mean by foreign nationals? That becomes the trickier question. Well, it's somebody on benefits. OK, so if somebody has worked here for 35 years, I don't know, Polish, French, Spanish, so from an EU country, their family here, their kids are now adults, they're here, but they're currently on a benefit because they got injured, whatever, they're disabled. Do they go in that equation? That's the kind of area you've got to look at. Steve's in Scunthorpe. How you doing, Steve?
Not too bad, thanks.
Good. Fire away. What have you got for us?
This sort of cut in VAT for these places.
Yeah.
Do they realise, I mean, people might say, oh, it's all you do is press a button, but the work involved of changing all your payments, your systems and all that.
Fair
for
point.
what? For what? I mean, let's say if you can afford to go out for the day, save it a £5 or 10 quid or whatever. It's not going to make any difference.
It's not going to make any difference at all. You go to the... I mean, I don't know why she's focused on the most expensive days out, which are theme parks, right? I mean, all of those things, you don't get... If you go as a family, you don't get any change out 150 quid just to get you in the place.
No, it's
that doesn't include driving there and the cost of the petrol, eating, gift shops, ice creams, and all the other little bits and pieces that get tagged along.
Yeah, I mean, the VAT people, the tax people, all that's got it. It's all extra work.
Yeah.
For what? What are you getting out of it? I don't think people realise once you change something, everything else goes in place. If you've got printed menus or anything like that, you've got to change them all. It's like when we go decimalisation or change the banknotes or whatever.
Yeah, so whatever. There's always going to be a knock-on effect. I mean, the government say, well, they're willing to take a hit on this, but I wonder if they've included all the various elements. Is there an answer, Steve? Do you think you ever look out at this weird and strange, but still occasionally wonderful world of ours and think, I could solve this problem?
Well, I think I can make a lot better job of it. I mean, I'm a bit older than most of the people in government, I think.
Well, maybe that would be a good thing, maybe.
Yeah, I'm 73 now, so I've seen a bit of life, and some of the things they come up with are absolutely stupid. But it is just trying to promote themselves. Okay, look what good guys we are.
Yeah.
I mean, I was listening earlier on about a reform council, and they were going to save us money, and they were saying, but they said yes, but they're cutting their debt, which this country needs to do. It's no good keep on borrowing money.
No. You've got to cut the debt. And as Daniel, our previous caller, was saying, 1997, we didn't, we were sorted, and now we're $3 trillion in the red. Great call, Steve. Thank you very much indeed. Just a quick one from Steve in Bermondsey, who says, my early life was the same as yours, Ian. We didn't have a lot, but what we had what we needed. It wasn't known as a cost of living crisis. It was just life. Yeah, it was just that. Nobody ever... My mum never came home and we've got a cost of living crisis. It's just like, life's really expensive, we struggle. That's going to be our disposition probably forever. And it kind of was for much of the time for my mum and dad. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 0344 499 1000, just gone 2:30. This from Jeff. He says, afternoon, Ian. Sorry, but it will take 10 years plus for the UK to get back on track. If not, we are doomed in 5 years. There are some suggestions, quite pessimistic, slightly depressing forecast that it will take a lot longer than 10 years. Depends who you listen to. And I guess it also depends who the heck is in charge. Now, Prince Andrew refusing to give up freedom of the City of London is one of the headlines, and there's many others out there today as the police continue to look into the former Prince Andrew. Let's speak with Robert Hardman, writer of the Daily Mail, author of the biography Elizabeth II in Private, in Public, The Inside Story. Robert, nice to have you on with us again, sir. Good afternoon.
Hello, Ian. Hi.
I mean, there's never a day, really, where this man isn't out of the headlines at the moment, isn't there? For a whole variety of reasons. We've probably got about another 2 years' worth left in this story.
I think you're right. I mean, as soon as Parliament goes into recess, what happens is step forward Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. I mean, I think exactly the same happened. Actually, he was last time when Parliament was in recess in February, then he was arrested. Yes, I mean, it's another... I mean, it's just when we think he can't really sink any deeper, and we go one more step with the news that the police are. I mean, the legal position has not changed, but the police are making it clear that their investigation is more extensive, perhaps, than some people think. But that follows on. Yesterday, we had the news from the government that about his appointment as a trade envoy, and then today comes this news that he's refusing. Well, it's painted as refusing to surrender the freedom of the City of London. I suspect he probably has no idea about this going on. I mean, since he's left office and really left his public life and been kicked out of the house, he doesn't really have much in the way of a secretariat or even much in the way of staff. So I dare say the City of London may well have been writing to him care of Buckingham Palace, and it's been sitting in an in tray. But the other thing is I suspect he's probably not going anywhere near the City of London or anyone else.
This is very true, and the word freedom is probably not a word he recognises much these days anyway, and he may not even realise he has the freedom of the City of London. Who knows?
Yeah, I think of all the things he wants to do right now, being able to drive a flock of sheep over Tower Bridge or whatever, London Bridge, isn't it?
That's
I think
the one,
it's probably fairly low down his bucket list.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's another just reminder of how far this man has fallen and what a sort of tawdry sideshow it is. Because actually, the royal family, the monarchy, have been on an absolute roll lately. I mean, the king has had a fabulous few months, notably with his state visit to the USA, which by any metric was a great success. You've had other members of the family, out and about in Italy and elsewhere, and so no, it's been very successful.
Is there? I mean, this may be a daft question, to be honest, Robert, but is there a way back for him? I mean, is there any such thing? I always think of the John Profumo, who obviously went through a horrendous time, and nothing of this scale as we now know, but it was certainly horrendous at the time, and largely dedicated his later life to charity and benevolence, and he was working in sort of Whitechapel sort of homeless shelters and the like, and I just thought, what a remarkable man. What more can you do? You feel you've messed up, you've let your country down, you've let your family down. What greater way, and I think there was a kind of slightly religious underpinning to what he did, than to put something back. So he did that, and he did it mostly fairly anonymously. I mean, I only say that because as the obvious way that you can sort of somehow regain credibility, is it to sort of join the Salvation Army or something?
Well, it's a very good point, Ian, and I have actually asked people in the palace and around the former Duke over a number of years, what about what some people sometimes call the Profumo option? And the way it's come back to me is, well, the thing about Jack Profumo is that he, when he was caught, he just put his hands up and said, guilty as charged. He left the Commons, he stepped down, he admitted everything. and then set about rebuilding his life, as you say, very quietly at Toynbee Hall in the East End, doing good deeds, and was eventually recognised for that.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with Prince Andrew is, it's not really in his nature to sort of start to go around scrubbing loos in the East End, and secondly, on a more serious note, he does, as we keep repeating, he says he hasn't done anything wrong, so to do what Profumo did would be an acknowledgement of some sort of guilt, and at the moment he's saying there isn't any. And it would completely undermine his legal position if he started doing that. So I think he is in a sort of enforced limbo. And we should remember, I mean, in recent weeks, there has been a lot of calls for the king to, for example, when he was in America, people were saying the king must talk to the Epstein victims. What's happened in the last 24 hours, underlines why the king simply can't go anywhere near this story, because to do so would put him in a position of legal jeopardy. He is the head of the judiciary. He's the fountain of justice. He can't go anywhere near anything that smacks of ongoing legal proceedings. So we are, although we in the media, of course, we want to talk about it, we want instant resolution, we're just going to have to wait to see where this goes.
Indeed. I have to say, just on a separate point, Robert, I had no idea this was called the Profumo option. I genuinely thought, up until that very point, that this was my own comparison, that I'm utterly devastated to discover other people have made this same...
Great minds. Great minds, Ian. Great
clearly,
minds think alike.
quite clearly. Robert, lovely to see you again. Thank you for your time. Have a great weekend. Robert Hardman, he is, of course, a writer at the Daily Mail, a very respected author of note, certainly that latest biography, Elizabeth II in Private, in Public, The Inside Story. Is there a way back for Andrew? And he won't give up the freedom of the city. Sarah Ferguson lost her honorary Freedom of the City of York back in March over her own links to Epstein. So I can't imagine Andrew's going to suddenly hire a lawyer to fight the case. As Robert Harmon just said, in all likelihood, he probably wasn't even aware that he'd been asked to give it up. I don't think that would be a problem. I think the idea that the police might be looking at sexual misconduct, well, I guess you would look at that anyway. Perhaps if this is, you're investigating a murky world as to whether there was misconduct in public office. And in doing so, by definition of the people you're talking about, which is Epstein, Prince Andrew, Mandelson's in there as well, there'd be a crossover, wouldn't there, into that world as well. So perhaps it's inevitable it might come up. Will they find anything? We will wait and see. Let's go to Lenny down there in good old Ashford. Lenny, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Well, there's 2 points I'd like to debate with you.
Yeah.
One is, now, we are living in a recession. Now, it doesn't matter what the figures say. Mm-hmm. A recession is when we've got mass unemployment and people can't afford to pay their household bills. Yeah. Now, it don't matter how you cover it up, mate. That is you're living in a recession. And the way to get out of it is you need a government that you can trust. You need a government that gives you confidence. And this government haven't got a clue how to create jobs or give anyone confidence to invest.
Do you think, I mean, the government would say, well, the technical definition of a recession, of course, this 2 periods of no growth or minus growth, whatever it is, we haven't hit that. So they would refute your initial suggestion, Lenny, that we're in a recession. But I know what you're saying. I mean, if it feels like a recession, it looks like a recession, then it probably is.
And that is it. Now, immigration has got... basically, we've got open door immigration at the moment. Mm. Now, all them figures that the Labour Party was so proud of, the devil is in the detail. Right? Now, apparently, there was 171,000, down to 171,000 immigrants net. The net figure. Now, that is very important. Because to get the net figure, there was tens of thousands of young people who we've educated, who were positive to work, which is one of our biggest struggles in this country today, who were positive to work. We've lost them to get the net figure, and what we've ended up with is 171,000 liabilities. Because every immigrant that comes in this country, they are a liability, one way or another.
You're talking about people who essentially hop on boats and come here rather than, you know, a Nigerian neurosurgeon.
Well, there aren't many Nigerian neurosurgeons, but what it is now, the boats are reduced. Now, it's nothing to do with Labour.
I don't think that figure, by the way, Lenny, I'm not sure that, because I think the boats went up, didn't they, on the first period, certainly the first section of Starmer's tenure as Prime Minister. I think they're talking about legal immigration, not illegal.
Well, if we just talk about the boats for now, now they have been reduced, but purely because of the east winds in the Channel. Now, this year, we've had a lot of easterly winds in the Channel, and that makes the boats dangerous to come across. Now, if you remember, Rishi, and he tried to claim that his idea was working. When he was coming to Dover, and he had an appointment on another radio station, I phoned up the radio station and said, don't listen to all these old trot that he's playing is working.
Yep.
The reason that there's not many boats is because the easterly winds in the Channel, and that is the only thing that controls them.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, I mean, I know it's the obvious thing, and the only thing arguably that President Macron said that made any sense, and that was that, you know, if the UK want to stop people making the crossing, they've got to withdraw the pull factor. I think were his words.
Totally right.
I mean, that's like a 12-year-old could work that out, right?
Yeah, but he's been telling that for us for years.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, ever since, you know, I mean, Javid, a Tory, laid the foundations for the boats to give us the situation we got now.
Well, he argued, he was the guy that, this is when he was Home Secretary, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just think about this, Lenny. I'm sure you're aware of this, but for those that aren't. Back in 2016, when there was this first flurry of boats, Sajid Javid cancelled his holiday to come back to the... It was so serious. Wow, 24 men have arrived on boats in the UK. Cancelled his holiday to come back to deal with it. And then he talked about sending in everything from submarines to drones and cutters, and the Navy were going to show up, and people, members of the RAF will be paragliding into. So there was all sorts of, you know, I don't know whether he called it an emergency, but it was in that ballpark, you know. It was certainly highlighted that it was a big problem.
Well, what I believe, what he created, the foundations that he laid with all the hotels and things like that, he would have been better off staying on holiday, because it was a liability.
What a waste of a cancelled holiday, you know. I mean, he didn't put it to any good use, did he?
I mean, all the actions he took and what he did are the foundations for the boats today.
Yeah. Well, we will, I'm sure, be debating it still in a year's time. Lenny, thank you, mate. Great to hear from you again, Lenny in Ashford. This in from Reg, who says, what do you got to remember? Also, Ian, was in the 1970s, there was probably one car for every 3 houses. Now there's 3 cars for every house. Every home used to have a telephone. Now every person in the house has a telephone. All of these are extra bills that we never used to have to pay. And that was before we started eating. And the other thing, we're living in I heard somebody say this, they said it accidentally, and this is nothing new, by the way, but it was interesting to hear somebody sort of say it without realising it. They said, we seem to live in a subscription world. And you think about it, everything is, you don't really own your phone. Well, you might own your phone, but you know what I'm saying. You get your phone from your provider, then you pay your monthly fee, and for not everybody, but for most people, your monthly bill includes the cost of the phone. And then, 2 years' time, you trade it in. So you're forever on a subscription with your phone. Your television is on a subscription, largely. Your music options are on a subscription. And that kind of list, the more you start to build, it goes on. So we've sort of opted in to that lifestyle where you sort of buy in your kind of recreational life in a way that was never really thinkable. So Reg is quite right about the obvious stuff like cars. I mean, I never forget my dad picking me up from school. My dad never picked me up from school, but it was the day of my nan's funeral. So obviously he wasn't at work, so he came and picked me up from school. And coming out the primary school and seeing this lone hillman hunter, that's what it was, sorry kids, this lone hillman hunter, which was knackered even back then, parked in the road in Cuckoo Lane. Was it Cuckoo Lane or Beaver Lane? One of those, in Ashford. And there it was, like through the fence, just lone car. If you drove there now, and what's it now, 10 to 3, it's nearly half term for kids in about 20 minutes. If you drove through there now, you wouldn't get through there now. There'd be cars on all sides, it'd be absolute carnage. And that's the same all over the place. But it just sort of shows the growth of expenditure for households up and down the country, and that doesn't include everything else I just mentioned. 0344 499 1000.
Conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Mark in Stratford says, I wonder when Rachel Reeves will start doing the victory gin and cigarettes. Us adults can get drunk and smoke ourselves to death, whilst the kids are left to fend for themselves on free bus rides and trips to Alton Towers. Give me strength. Wouldn't that be great if, Rachel, I would have a whole different respect if Rachel Reeves just stood up and said, I'm announcing today free Marlboro Lights for everybody. Wouldn't that just be brilliant? What a great Chancellor. She'd go down in flipping history. Free Marlboro Lights and free Moretti for at least for the summer. I met a day like today. Believe me, I'm heading straight for the shops after this shift. You'd go, Rachel, you're brilliant. But of course, all the health fascists would go, you can't do that. It's terrible. It's been brilliant life, wouldn't it? So that's just for the kids I'm talking about. Then she'd get onto the adult stuff, and who knows what she might announce then. I've got no idea. We're going to talk to Nick in just a second. We've got the voice of doom. It's a brand new voice. No, it's not a brand new voice. It's day 5 of a voice. We think this is pretty tricky. In fact, I know it's tricky. There's lots of reasons why I know it's tricky, namely because I've never heard of the person who it is. That gives you an idea, or maybe a little bit. I could be teasing, but this is the voice.
In how we think about...
So it's a mystery voice, right? It's a politician, left wing, right wing, dead or alive. Who is this?
In how we think about...
Let's hear that again.
In how we think about...
We had some common answers, Finn, some common ones each day coming up. Laura Trott seems to come up a lot. Who's my MP? It's not her. Yeah, mostly just people naming known female MPs. And, like, there are quite a lot of female MPs now. It's not like the old days. Is it half and half, or roughly, or thereabouts? 0344... No, not 0344. 87222. That's the only way to have a crack at this. 87222, if you know who this is.
In how we think about...
And the winner will get a cut price bus ride to Alton Towers, but you'll have to pay full price for the ticket. There you go. Just to clarify that, because, you know, the Ofcom fans might go, well, he said it. He said Alton Towers. No, pay your own ticket. We might pay for your bus fare. Unless you live in Stirling, in which case I won't pay for the bus fare. You get the spirit of this. There is no prize. 87222 if you know who this is.
In how we think about...
Let's go to Nick, who's down in London. How you doing, Nick?
I'm very hot, and I've been driving around South London most of the day.
Just for a laugh, or
blooming gridlock?
Okay.
Yeah, well, for a laugh. You know. What else would you do?
Only a mad person would say, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to drive around London in a car.
Oh, driven me mad. No pun intended.
Yeah.
Talk News earlier in the day reported that last month the government took out for borrowings of £20 billion, of which £10 billion is paying debt interest on the debt previously.
That would be about right, yeah.
Now, well, if you're in that much of debt, what on earth are the government doing? What is Rachel Reeves doing in splurging out £350 million, something like that, on money off for Alton Towers and Legoland? And I mean, it is the economics of madness to do it. And I'd have a great deal more respect for her if she took that £350 million and paid off some of the debt, because that will reduce the debt interest, because that will give more money, genuine money, rather than borrowing more.
That's fair.
You're a father, you're Ian, you're a parent. Would you borrow money off your children and grandchildren, unborn grandchildren, to waste on days out? Of course you would. Not many parents would. But that's what the government have done. In fairness, successive governments over decades have done. What you would do is pay off as much as you can the debt, and then if you've got some money over, you can do these things. Interestingly, £350 million is in 1 month is 30 days of £10 billion. That is to say, your £10 billion debt over 30 days is £350 million. Now there's a lesson in there which I can't quite.
No, I like the thinking on all of this. But you would assume, though, Nick, that of all the things you're going to accuse Rachel, you know, there's Rachel Reeves, who's the kind of sort of front-facing figure of finance, just to throw some alliteration in there, and then of course there's a gazillion legal lawyers and financial brains that work around her. They must know all this, right? It's not like they go, oh, I've just heard Nick on the radio. I didn't realise we were doing this.
I think it's almost a Stockholm syndrome. I think
Maybe.
you have to say this stuff
Yep.
to maintain your post, your well reimbursed post. I've been a government expert over the years, retired now, but I've been it, and you learn pretty quickly, unless you say things that the government want to hear, you don't stay a government expert.
Yeah,
very
you see,
long.
you're absolutely right. They are absolutely... I mean, you mentioned Stockholm Syndrome and, to be more polite, wedded to the status quo, right? I mean, it's just easier to not rock the boat.
Oh, yeah, and plenty of people rocked boats and found out that it wasn't very...
Rock the boat and walk the plank seems to be the way forward.
Exactly so.
Indeed.
Exactly so.
Listen, Nick, you've been brilliant. I've got to step in only because the news is coming on. Thank you very much for that. Enjoy your drive, and I hope you get to where you need to be going. And I hope there's aircon in the car as well. Richard in Leicester says, Reeves' kids' giveaway is just politics. We've been on austerity for a year now. A cost of living crisis. No one can see the economy's books. We take the word of the untrustworthy parties, says Richard. Yeah, I mean, if you want to do a deep dive, you can do it yourself, but you will see something so darn complicated. It will make no sense to anyone, even to most economists, for that matter. 0344 499 1000. We've got a final hour to come on this show. A bank holiday weekend is on the way. We've also got the voice of doom. Have a listen.
In how we think about
87222 if you think you know who that is. Right now, 3 o'clock, let's get the latest news headlines.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Yeah, it is the home of common sense. 3 minutes after 3 o'clock. Loads to get through. We'll continue to take your calls on Rachel Reeves' cost of living crisis. We threw out the question at the beginning of the programme. We had some really good calls on this. Is Britain's cost of living crisis permanent? So you've got Rachel Reeves going, don't worry, we'll send you some discount cards for Alton Towers or Legoland or wherever the heck it is. You want to go, oh, and free bus rides for the... I mean, this stuff, people are looking at their energy bills that look like a ransom note. They're looking at their council tax that have all the romance of a parking ticket. This is the place we're in right now. But is it permanent? We just got to go, do you know what? Let's stop moaning, because this is the state of play now. What we had back in the day, in the 90s and the 2000s, that was artificial. All the credit cards and the cheap money, that was all artificial. This is the reality. I'm not buying that point, but is that perhaps where we might be? We'll open the lines on that and continue to take your calls. Detectives investigating Andrew Mountbatten Windsor could investigate allegations of sexual misconduct as part of their inquiry. We've been talking about that too. Happy to take your response. And Britain preparing for a bank holiday heatwave with amber alerts now in effect. Across large parts of the country, the Met Office forecast that temperatures could hit 33 degrees Celsius in the south and in the Midlands. That is hot, kids. Joe Wheeler, the meteorologist, is going to join us a little later as well. 0344 499 1000. And Brad in Cambridge says the cost of living crisis will remain as long as the growth in our population outstrips our economic growth. Obvious, but a fact nevertheless, says Brad. The problem with population growth, whether it's artificial, as in immigration, or whether it just happens indigenously, if that's the right word, you can't really reverse it. I mean, you could, and Rupert Lowe would just get rid of lots of people, whatever the practicalities of that are. But the major parties, to look at it that way, wouldn't reverse it. They can tinker around the edges. So you kind of got to live with it. But Brad is, spot on. That's just a basic fact, isn't it? If you have the population outstripping economic growth, then Daniel in Epsom made a similar point. There's nothing you can do about it. Coming up on 3:05, let's look at this story. New government guidance from the EHRC states that businesses and public buildings must base single-sex facility use on biological sex, but staff should not ask users their sex or challenge those suspected of using the wrong toilet or changing room. I don't quite know where that leaves us. Kathy Larkman is director of the Women's Rights Network. I'll string a sentence together if I can here, Kathy. Nice to have you with us. I'll just let you take over. What does this mean? Did I just read out something there is slightly nonsensical?
Yeah, it certainly sounded like that. I think the most important thing to say, first of all, is that we really, really welcome the EHRC guidance, the Code of Practice, finally coming out, because it's been over a year since the Supreme Court judgment in the case of For Women Scotland versus Scottish ministers actually clarified the law. So all these organisations, all these service providers and duty bearers already knew what the law was. It was crystal clear, but we've had a long, drawn-out season of excuses for not complying with the law and waiting for the EHRC guidance. Well, the EHRC guidance is here now, and the long season of excuses is over. Those organisations need to get their acts together, amend their policies and ensure that they are lawful.
Here's a weird question, Kathy. What happened before the world lost its mind over gender? What was happening then? I always quote, back in the day when Nadia won Big Brother and nobody really mentioned the fact that Nadia used to be Nick or whatever the previous name was. What was happening in changing rooms? Was this ever a debate that you were aware of?
Well, I think if we sort of both cast our minds back, what we had was a certain amount of courtesy and etiquette to a very, very tiny number of people. And that courtesy and etiquette didn't extend to not realising what sex they were. We knew what sex they were. We knew that, this man remained a man regardless of what he dressed in, what makeup he put on, or even what cosmetic surgery he had. And likewise for a woman who wanted to present as a man. We knew, but we took part in a little bit of sort of social etiquette, those individuals. What happened is that lobby groups have professed an entitlements for individuals that didn't actually hold, have misrepresented the law, have persuaded a lot of organisations who should have known better to rely on their misrepresentations and have written into policies an entitlement to use the facilities of the opposite sex. That entitlement was never there. And a lot of these organisations are now going to have to eat humble pie and amend their policies.
My own view on this, Kathy, is that this didn't come around because of trans people. This came around because of gender evangelists and hard left kind of campaigners that wanted to be able to stick their finger up at you and go, I'm a woman and you can't tell me I'm not. I think it was that group rather than the Nadias of this world that are responsible.
Well, I think, the group has, the groups of campaigning really for access to the opposite sex spaces has exploded. And we're not talking about one or two people anymore.
True.
But what's happened here is the various different lobby groups, some of whom have had, perfectly legitimate campaigns in the past that we would all support around same-sex marriage.
Stonewall, obviously, you're talking about who. Stonewall would have been winning awards 2 decades ago. Now,
Absolutely.
Frankly, their entire purpose has been blown to smithereens.
Well, yes, and of course, they achieved all their objectives. They achieved their objectives here in the UK. So rather than campaign for, lesbian, gay or bisexual people who are being horrendously oppressed, in other areas around the world, they changed their mission statement and took on the let's broadly call it the trans rights sort of campaign. But it's not a trans rights campaign. It was actually, taking away the rights of women and girls because it's important that women and girls can take part in public life. And to take part in public life, that sometimes we need single-sex spaces which we can be assured are only accessed by fellow women and girls.
Yeah.
And the law has always said that since the Equality Act in 2010. The Supreme Court judgment clarified it. It's just a case of, there are those who are pretending that it didn't happen and pretending that they can just ignore it and, stick their fingers in their ears and go la la la, in effect.
It's interesting because I remember you will be familiar with India Willoughby, I'm sure. And India Willoughby, before India went mad, these are my words, so I'll just choose them very carefully, was a very level-headed trans woman who just talked a lot of common sense. And she sat in this studio all those times and said, I remember India went to some do in Trafalgar Square to be a speaker at something, and a fella got on stage and said to this crowd, I am a woman and I have a penis. And the crowd roared, and India went, I'm not putting up with this nonsense, I'm going home. And I thought, fair play, India. This is rather sort of playing out the point that I made a second ago, Kathy. But then India sort of changed tone, and I think she's now team man with penis rather than, I don't mean India has you know what I'm saying, the bloke that I referred to in Trafalgar Square, and completely changed into sort of an evangelist on this issue and blocked me on social media and called me responsible for crimes and goodness knows what else. It was all quite a sort of sad demise in my eyes watching this, but that's sort of what happened. People have lost their mind. They've gone from logical thinkers to sort of adopting this curious, perverse, anti-intellectual position that, a bloke wants to put a pair of knickers on and a blonde wig and can call himself a woman. That's not okay.
And sometimes not even that, just saying, I am a woman is enough. That was enough for the lobbyists to say, well, that's sufficient and you've got access to female spaces. And vice versa applies as well. I mean, there was a horrendous case, I don't know if you saw it, Ian, that came up before trial in the last week or two, South London and Maudsley Psychiatric Hospital, where a woman identifying as a man was admitted to a male ward. Within half an hour, she was subjected to a rape.
Yeah.
Why have we lost leave of our senses here? Men are men, women are women, and sometimes sex matters in life and law. And, safeguarding seems to have been blown out of the window. Common sense seems to have been blown out of the window and responsibility blown out the window. We've got organisations like police forces misrepresenting the law, NHS trusts misrepresenting the law, schools doing it, universities doing it. They're all going to have to amend their policies now, and not a moment before time. You know, what's been happening has been absolutely shocking.
Spot on. Kathy, great to have you with us. Have a lovely weekend. Enjoy the sunshine. Kathy Larkman, Director of the Women's Rights Network. Thank you to her. It's a question I suppose I can only really, with any value, put to women. When it comes to biological men using women's changing rooms and toilets and bathrooms and stuff. But bearing in mind, this conversation was never a conversation up until relatively recently. The last, not even 10 years, 6, 7 years, something like that. Does it make a difference if the person, you know, if somebody, which is why I mentioned India Willoughby, who took a decision because India clearly felt that and knew in her own mind that, you know, I don't, this whole man thing doesn't feel right. I'm going to live as a woman. Nobody had a problem with that in any shape or form. I'm sure there were issues that India experienced, but broadly speaking, and I sort of go back to that. And if the first time I interviewed, by the way, India Willoughby, I didn't know that India Willoughby was a trans. I did not know, genuinely. Which comes to the point that I was going to make. If you're a woman, does it make a difference if somebody has gone on the journey, they've clearly felt that their own self-identification, their birth gender does not represent how they feel and what they feel, so they are going to do something about that, and they're going to go on a journey, and they may go on that journey surgically and have all manner of procedures. It could be a top procedure, it could be everything. They may just simply decide to dress, but dress, you know, not ostentatiously or in a way that's going to mark you out. They're not trying to draw attention to themselves, and live their lives as their preferred gender and just carry on as their preferred gender. And if you saw somebody so I'm asking this to women, walk into the ladies' loos who looks like a woman, is that different? And I have to guess it is. Even though you might know that this person wasn't born a woman, is that different to somebody pitching up who looks like Peter Kay with a moustache but wearing a dress and a blonde wig? Now, I know on the face of it that's obviously different, but the argument up until now had been there is no difference. If Peter Kay with the moustache and the long beard and a pair of knickers says I'm a woman, then that was it. You had to go, oh, OK, in you come, go crazy. The urinals are that way. Oh, no, you won't need those. That. Does it make a difference as a woman who walks in? If you go, oh, that person, yeah, that's right, apparently I heard they were born a bloke. And they look great. You know, there are some incredible examples of this across the world. Is that the deciding difference? Is it how somebody looks? 0344 499 1000. So much to get through. It's 3:15. This is Talk.
conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
20 coming up on 20 past 3. There's a heat wave out there pretty much everywhere, I think. Let's speak with Joe Wheeler, meteorologist with Square Raindrop. Joe, good afternoon to you. Is there any... You're not going to tell me it's, I don't know, snowing in Penzance or something, or there's a hurricane in Middlesbrough. Am I right in saying pretty much across the country it's pretty good weather? To differing levels, but pretty good.
Yes, well, it is good for most, although I have to say, if you are driving from inland England into parts of Wales and the southwest today, which of course many people will, it's a bank holiday weekend and it's the start of half term, you could be severely disappointed because overnight we had a lot of low cloud and sea mist roll in across those western coasts, and it hasn't quite burnt back. So you could be leaving the sunshine and the heat and driving something much cooler and rather dull. And of course, Ireland and Scotland also favoured places for holidays. They're pretty grey. They've got frontal systems absolutely locked over them at the moment, which won't go away. So yes, there are variations, but where it's warm, it's warm.
It is indeed. And tell us about those warm places, Joe. I mean, we know the capital, the Midlands, I understand, are doing quite well on the warm front. What's it looking like?
Well, certainly down in the southeast, temperatures have been pushing their way up to around 28, 29 degrees Celsius is the headline for today. We could surpass that in a few places. And in fact, that's an area really from London up towards Cambridge. Now, that starts to shift over the next few days. We then get to London, the home counties, and then we move from London to the south coast. And then into next week, the heat starts to shift its way back towards the west. So we're looking at places like Bristol, up towards Birmingham. That's because the high pressure that's keeping everything calm and settled moves its way northwards. It kicks out that cloud and rain over Scotland and Northern Ireland, so things brighten up there. But then it starts to bring in a bit of a northeasterly drift. So then North Sea coast start becoming cooler.
And in terms of those places that are doing rather well with the weather, I mean, this isn't something that's a 24-hour thing. I mean, I'm looking at the southeast. This is kind of a week or more of this.
Oh, yes. Well, it's quite likely that records will be broken this weekend. The hottest bank holiday ever was in 2019 in August at Heathrow. 33.3 was the high. So we could see the hottest ever bank holiday yet. Wow. We could also see the hottest ever May Day. We could see the hottest ever or warmest ever overnight minimum. There are certainly many records on the table at the moment that could be broken over the weekend. Now, the interesting thing is, usually when we have this warm air, it's a southerly flow. We're bringing warmer up from Iberia, we say, or out of France. At the moment, all of Europe is very warm, and the air, in fact, came from Canada, not exactly known for its warmth. And the reason why is it took its time coming over, and it was in high pressure, which means that the air was sinking, and sinking air warms up. So really, this is a gift from Canada, and that's why we're seeing these excessive temperatures. Now, of course, the definition of a heat wave is different for each region you go to. For London, don't quote me on this, I think the temperature is 28, so you need 3 consecutive days of temperatures surpassing 28 Celsius. Move a little bit out of London and that drops to around 27, and then obviously in rings out from that. So it depends on your area as to whether or not you are in a heat wave or not. The UK HSA has issued an amber warning. Now, usually they don't start work till June the 1st, so they've been called back in early. And that's because we don't usually see this kind of heat in May. But yeah, they're saying it's going to be warm. Now, the UK HSA shouldn't actually be for public consumption at all. It's more for hospitals and care homes. But the fact that they're there tells you something.
We had this message come in, Joe, from Wendy. She sent this a couple of hours ago. Wendy's in Clackmannanshire, who says, we have literally just put the heating on. It's dark and gloomy in central Scotland. Hope everybody else enjoys the sunshine. With like a little sun emoji there.
Yeah, unfortunately, as I say, Scotland and Northern Ireland at the moment under this cloud. In fact, patchy rain there will be replaced by heavier rain overnight. I should just say, actually, that heavier rain moving its way northwards, I'm sorry, keep the heating on, it's not going to be that good. And the winds pick up as well in those northwestern areas. But we also see a weakening feature moving its way southwards overnight. Now, I say weakening because it's running into that high pressure, which usually kills things off.
Yeah.
But there's a good chance around the dawn, Lincolnshire, parts of East Anglia, the southeast, could see some potentially vitriolic thunderstorms.
Right, so those thunderstorms could be there. Just give us I suppose, a grim warning, or a very important warning, but it's potentially grim results. The fire brigade are warning the risk of wildfires are very real. Some of these things can occur naturally, of course, but there's always the possibility that some half-wit goes out with one of those kind of barbecues and goes, I don't need to put it out, I'll just leave it there, or starts one in the bush themselves.
Yeah, okay. So change in weather. Let's have some warnings. Yes, obviously, don't leave things that are lit around in dry places, although we haven't been dry for that long. But never mind, the heat is rising. Let's go for that. Also, would mention at this time of year that sea temperatures, rivers, that kind of thing, they haven't had a chance to warm up yet. So there is a real risk in these very high temperatures that somebody thinks, oh, a body of cold water, what a great idea, and then suffer cold water shock. And then whilst they're parading around in their Speedos or whatever people wear these days, they're unaware of the fact that the UV levels are at around 8. So the sun is as strong at the moment as it is in late August. So do watch out for that. And also, if you suffer from hay fever, the weed pollen is high at the moment. It would be anyway.
Okay.
But also we're seeing early grass pollen too.
It's a fair point to finish on. Joe, great to see you. Great to talk again. Thank you, Joe Wheeler, meteorologist with Square Raindrop. Thank you to her. So other than Clackmannanshire, and there might be other places, but quite a lot of the UK. I mean, I was just looking at my local temperatures for my neck of the woods. So today 24, Saturday 27, Sunday 28, Monday 30, Tuesday 29. Wednesday goes down a bit to 22, but I'm good with that. Thursday 24, Friday, so this is a week today, 25. And it kind of keeps in that vein for a bit. Saturday the 30th, 23, Sunday 22. And it's not really until Monday the 1st of June that it's predicted to rain. And it, by the way, hasn't really rained at all for 7 weeks, not in any meaningful way. Ray is in Colchester on the cost of living. Ray, what have you got for us?
Yeah, I'm afraid the government seems to be heading down the path of, shall we call it the Venezuelan option, where effectively they destroyed their oil industry. They effectively became everything was beholden to the government, and they took the richest country, one of the richest countries in the world, into abject poverty. And I'm afraid our government seems to be following exactly the same path with its destruction of our oil industry. They've already just mentioned about doing price control, which is a wonderful thing that always ends in absolute poverty for everyone. Yeah. And then you have the whole bread and circuses things with this slight, go and have a bit of a discount on some food and some fun at the fun fair without actually addressing the real issue, which is the massive taxation on fuel. Yeah. If they were to cut that, it would have an immediate effect on every aspect of our lives, industry, retail, you name it. But of course, that would be a good thing. And somehow I don't think this government is interested in doing good things.
And I always try to, I know this probably sounds a bit daft, but I always try to think, fairly about, whoever's in power, even if it's a party I wouldn't support. And I said this to somebody earlier. Everything you've just said, somebody must know, right? There's got to be at least one of those many advisors. And these are people at the top of their game in the world of economics who work in the Treasury, not the MPs, because they don't know very much at all. But those advisors around them, there must be one of them saying everything you just said.
Well, at the end of the day, our politicians are just posturing apes. They're the bits of entertainment we get to
posturing apes. That's brilliant.
But actually, they don't actually have any real power anymore. Yeah. The power is with the blob. And the blob is following, I think it was good old Yes Minister summed it up beautifully when it said that the new minister comes in thinking he's full of vim and vigour and he's about to change something. And then the permanent secretary sits him down, opens a big book, says, this is where we are on the plan. We can either destroy your career, or if you just follow the plan, you will move effortlessly up the greasy pole.
The version I hear more, I have to say, is that the blob, as they're now called, will try and advise against a lot of stuff because it's a ball egg, rather than because they've got some political kind of skin.
So what you mean is, effectively, anything that actually is common sense and actually will do something good for the people of this country is automatically out of bounds, and it always has to be. It's a bit like you have two paths to choose. Do you go into the deep, dark woods where it says the sign saying danger there is, or do you go walk towards the sunshine? And I'm afraid when it comes to those choices, the people in charge, and I do use that phrase very loosely, basically always seem to go into the dark, deep woods where it's going to drag people down. If you notice, there's more and more, even with this bright sunshine. All we've had unremitting is how terrible it is, how bad it is. And you've got people flying on holiday to hotter places than this, and we're being told we've got to stay indoors and all the rest of it. It's a symptom of a society that I think is really lost its way completely as to what government is meant to do. And it just seems to me they've decided what they're going to do is follow the path that unfortunately so many seem to be following all across the world, of basically communism and all the rest of it, where we already know where that ends. It's literally, we are redoing the bad ideas of the past.
Well, is it, or is it the path of least resistance? I remember Michael Howard, remember when he was Home Secretary under the Tories, he said that, he arrived at the Home Office and he was taken into a room. There was the permanent secretary and a couple of others, and they whipped out this flip chart, showed him a big graph and said, look, this is the rate of crime, Home Secretary. You can see how it increases, and we're here to tell you there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Now, he took that and said, no, there is something I can do about it, and he kind of did. He jailed more people, and that was an initiative that was carried on by David Blunkett and others who or Labour certainly, that carried on jailing more people. So you sort of do solve some crime. Now, that wasn't being said to him because there was a secret initiative to create chaos on the streets. That was said to him because it was too much of an ache to change the system.
What there is in any system, there is a system view of the world. And that's what we've now got. And the system view of the world is that Britain, the UK, is a country in decline, has been in decline for a long time, partially from the hangover from empire and all the rest of it. And although we had, some would argue a terrible thing, I would argue otherwise, where Thatcher really turned things around, certainly over the last 40 years, there's been a movement back to managing that decline. That's one of the reasons why people aren't. I used to be a Tory voter. That's why I no longer am, because both of them stopped being what they were meant to be. Labour in the under Blair, they came up with triangulation. They decided that you could completely ignore your own voters because they've got nowhere else to go. And so you go to the middle. And then I'm afraid the Tories followed exactly the same path. You ignore your own voters, you go to the middle, and what you ended up with is a complete blob in the middle politically, not able to do anything for either of their supporters. And that's why we've basically been in revolt as a country, really since way before Brexit. We were voting always to stop immigration, and we've been ignored and ignored and ignored. And then the very politicians who've ignored us are acting terribly surprised that people aren't believing a word they say anymore.
I do wonder, Ray, whether, I mean, the left, and arguably this is sort of, I think, Andy Burnham's position, would sort of say that what's actually happened, what they've been trying to manage, is the inevitable dominance of capitalism. That capitalism was a great idea in the mid-80s, Reaganomics, Thatcher, Reagan, the Big Bang in the city, everyone went nuts, people bought their houses, you could drive a car off a forecourt for 50 quid, your work experience kid had credit cards, everything was amazing. It went on for 30 years. but it could never last. There was a bubble that was going to burst, and that's what they've been trying to make. Now, I don't know whether that's true, but I think that would be the left-wing argument, or certainly one argument, left or otherwise.
Burst in with 98 when the whole thing, finance came tumbling down. And the reality is as to why people can't afford anything. It's not the amount of money the government can give you. If you're a pensioner in the future, they could give you £1 million a week. The question is, what will that £1 million buy?
Yeah, what would it be worth?
Actually done, is devalued by printing trillions. I think we're about near enough 2 trillion in debt.
Yeah.
By ever printing more and more money, it makes the money in your pocket worth less and less. We call it inflation, but it is not inflation. It's the deliberate devaluation of currency. It's happened over the millennia. You've only got to look at Rome and every other civilization, and there comes a tipping point when people no longer believe that money is worth its face value. Yeah. The reason I think that bit of paper is worth £10 is because you believe it's worth £10 of value. When we stop believing that, that's when the real problems start.
Love it. Great call, Ray. Really enjoyed that. I wish we had a pint each when we were discussing it as well. It would have made it even more interesting. That's Ray in Colchester with thoughts on where we're at and how we got here and what's behind it. 0344 499 1000. Just gone 3:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 25-4. Now, after England's World Cup squad was announced, manager Thomas Tuchel admitted he was surprised by the public reaction of defender Harry Maguire, who was a notable omission. High-profile players like Cole Palmer, Phil Foden, Morgan Gibbs-White, Luke Shaw were also left out of the 26-man selection. Only one man to talk to, that's Max Scott, TalkSport presenter and reporter, football diehard and Forest fan. I only put that in there just to seal your credentials, because I think Forest have had a cracking year, by the way.
Well, it's fourth manager, but we got to a European semi-final and went from near relegation to cruising away from that. It is, but from a Forest perspective, the omission of Morgan Gibbs-White, the English player with the most goals in the Premier League, that omission is a slap in the face of meritocracy. It's a crime against football, and outside of the Forest bubble, which is very small here in London, but obviously massive in Nottingham, so many people, pundits, fans alike, are shocked that he hasn't done enough to get into this Thomas Tuchel squad. What do you have to do to earn a cap for your country? Surely you have to be one of the best players in the Premier League and in the country, and Morgan Gibbs-White's proven that.
Yeah, or not appoint a former Chelsea manager as the England manager. There's maybe another way around this.
Yes, I mean, talking about Chelsea, Cole Palmer, who scored in the Euro 2024 final, he's been left out, as has Phil Foden. But quite frankly, both of those players have been completely off the boil. And there is a sense that whilst Thomas Tuchel, there's lots of questions about some of his omissions, most football-going fans, match-paying fans, will say, actually, it's right that they're not in there.
Well, it's interesting because obviously Cole Palmer, area I would have an interest in, didn't play for much of the season, of course. He was injured, and he's back. And I saw him at Wembley the other day in the FA Cup final. I thought he had a good game, but I can kind of see why.
Yeah, and someone like Cole Palmer has played too much football. He played all of last season, had a world-class season, then played in this Club World Cup, which is a money-making machine for FIFA, didn't stop, then inevitably got injured, and he hasn't been able to find that form. He is an absolute Rolls-Royce of a player, but this much wider issue facing football about fixture congestion and the amounts of minutes these world-class players play, there's an argument that it's ruining the actual product because we are not seeing the best of some of these players like Foden, like Palmer this season. But in other news, there are 9 defenders, Ian. 9 defenders in this squad. So if you expect to see vintage end-to-end football, don't watch it. And there are 9 defenders, probably because 3 of them have spent most of the season injured, particularly John Stones, who's played 8 minutes in the Premier League.
Yeah, so what happened there? What's the Tuchel thinking on this?
Well, the Tuchel thinking is that, to use the phrase again, John Stones is a Rolls-Royce of a football player. He's won multiple Premier Leagues, he's won a Champions League, he's seen by Pep Guardiola as one of the best defenders he's ever managed. And so there's no doubt about his credentials.
No one disputes that.
No one disputes it. People dispute the fact that he's played 8 Premier League minutes. How has he earned this call-up? That will be what fans say. And also Reece James, again, we know he's a magnificent player, versatile, one of the best deliverers of the football in the game. But he can also play in centre midfield. But if he can play, let's say, 70 minutes for 8 games and win the World Cup, that would be not a minor miracle, a major miracle.
I mean, you're absolutely bang on, Max, about this idea of kind of essentially overworking your assets. And these guys are, they're never off. I mean, I know there's always great to look back at the days of seeing Wayne Rooney with a cigarette and a beer, but that really doesn't happen very often. I was looking at Villa the other day and thinking, after that win, where would they be right now? And the answer is probably in bed, probably, ready to get that plane home the very next day.
Or if they are anywhere, it'll be under a strict no mobile phone policy.
No
because
mobile phones.
There will be people desperate to try to bring down a young man for having a good time and celebrating.
But you can understand, I mean, the need to look, I mean, this is a multi-million, billion-pound business in an industry. These are your products, you need to look after them, so why would you work them relentlessly to the point that we're having this conversation? We were saying during the break, you wouldn't take, McLaren wouldn't take an F1 car out and go, let's use this 3 times more than it was designed to be used. That would be ridiculous.
Absolutely.
But we do it with players.
We do it with players, and this is one of the sort of concerning things, is you look at lots of other European teams on the continent, they all have winter breaks. Now, the only thing that this is good news for is Harry Kane. Harry Kane playing over in Bayern Munich, who scored, I think, 60 goals in all competitions this season, broken records from the great Robert Lewandowski. He's had a winter break. He's been really well managed by Vincent Kompany and the top brass at Bayern Munich. And so hopefully for Harry Kane, who's been questioned in major tournaments, his class has never been questioned, but in the Euro 2024 he had a chronic back issue. The only hope is that he will be fresh as a fiddle, essentially. But just some of the other big sort of concerns, you look at Jordan Henderson. Jordan Henderson, who is far past his best, is only being picked on vibes, on the fact that he has great professional standards and is seen as a leader. Well, Thomas Tuchel, take him as a coach. Don't deprive someone like Morgan Gibbs-White or Cole Palmer or Phil Foden, one of these brilliant midfielders. Don't deprive them, or Adam Wharton, just because Jordan Henderson is a great leader. Lewis Hall has missed out. A great proper classic English fullback's missed out, because it's largely believed that Thomas Tuchel thinks that the 6'7" Dan Burn can fill in at left-back. Well, you're not going to want to put Dan Burn up against Ousmane Dembele or Kylian Mbappe. There are some serious questions for Thomas Tuchel. But what I will say, Ian, I know I'm ranting here, but what I will say is, despite all of that, I love this country. I will back this team. I will back Thomas Tuchel to the hilt, 3 lions on the shirt. But this is what the game is about. It's about opinions, and there are so many off the back of this 26-man World Cup.
There are so many. And, of course, what's become the biggest headline isn't really you know, a top defender like Maguire, it's his mother that's caused the headline.
Absolute disgust.
Because Harry's mum is absolutely apoplectic, and she wasn't afraid to tell the world on social media.
No, she wasn't. And there's a part of me that thinks, you know what?
I'm with her.
She's a passionate mum who loves her son. And yes, you could say, look, just stay out of it. Don't bring the heat on yourself that you inevitably will if you tweet out something like that. I think actually...
That's 7 million people.
I know, it's incredible. But, you know, when I think of how passionate I am as an England fan and as a broadcaster, I think I can't throw stones because I'm as passionate as she is, and she's devastated that her son, who probably deserves it, isn't in the squad. I think the biggest shock is actually Harry Maguire speaking exclusively to TalkSport, giving us a statement. And you sort of think, well, if a Dan Burn gets injured, is Thomas Tuchel now a bit less likely to come and ask for your support to step in because you've come out so openly in the media? But look, football is a passionate game. It's about opinions, and when it comes to the World Cup, it's the pinnacle, and so I don't blame him.
Yeah. Do you think who's going to be that player then that really turns up for this? I mean, Kane is always the kind of... my judgment on football now is if somebody looks as if they're the kind of person that would turn up at your house and lay your patio, and I've always thought that about... I used to think about Vardy at Leicester. I used to think, you know, he looks like a bloke that could be working in my back garden. And Harry does as well. And for some reason, that to me, I don't know, it smacks of workhorse. I think of John Terry at Chelsea. Workhorse, you know, absolutely just give it 10,000. I mean, Harry Kane, for God's sake, could be running... He's so popular in Germany. They absolutely love the man. Is he going to turn up on this? When I say turn up, I mean, can he really turn it on?
Ian, I really do believe he will.
I think he will.
He's been looked after masterfully by the people at Bayern Munich. He's invested, as he should, but he's invested his own money in the state-of-the-art hyperbaric chambers for climate training. I've got no doubt that this is going to be Harry Kane's most successful major tournament for England. I really believe it. And despite all the omissions, look at the class on the grass behind him. Eberechi Eze, Jude Bellingham, Declan Rice, the Geordie Maradona, Elliot Anderson, Kobbie Mainoo. I mean, the list is endless. So even though we can fume at the omissions, there is no doubt that Thomas Tuchel has picked, in midfield and attack, I would say, a world-class squad. It's as simple as.
Absolutely. I mean, these are all... It's interesting how discerning... I was having a conversation with somebody who lives near me who knows absolutely nothing about football, other than they said, oh, Burnley, they're rubbish, aren't they? And I said, well, OK, I'll tell you what, you try and play against them then. Because you tend to forget that all of these people are very gifted sportsmen. They're top of their game, even those that might be taking a journey down a league. You know, they could... You know, they'd injure you if if a ball came in your direction. But this is the England squad, so we know who they are. Croatia, first match, 17th of June. I mean, we can't predict scores at this stage, not really, but Ghana, Panama, I mean, these are our first three games. These are and should, on pay. I should be confident enough now to go, well, we will clearly win all of those. The first one might be the trickier, or would Ghana be tricky? I don't know.
Well, Ghana didn't qualify for AFCON, but they, you know... The development of African football and the sheer talent pool available is why we're seeing AFCON become much more successful, much more competitive, and these African sides like Morocco, like Senegal, really competing on the world stage. Morocco, the last World Cup, got to the semi-final. And so Ghana, you know, none of those are easy games. I think we're going to see, certainly in the group stages, as the players acclimatise, we're going to see maximum victories by 2 goals. I think that first game against Croatia is going to be there's going to be 1 goal in it. I think it could be 1-0, 2-1, but I think England will grow into the tournament. And this is my hunch, and I think I'm going to be absolutely bang on about this. If England get to a final, they will win it. The biggest challenge, if all things go to plan, is France in a semi-final. I don't think what we should be worrying about is the final. If we get there, Thomas Tuchel is an elite manager. He has prepped this side to win a World Cup final. It's whether we can get through Kylian Mbappe and France.
Well, I was about to say, you know, we can talk about 26 players in front. You only just need to cite, 3 players that put the fear of God into anyone in the French side, and you think, is that beatable by anyone?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, but not only that, you look at Portugal and their midfield, it's absolutely astonishing. Bruno Fernandes, Vitinha at PSG, who's arguably the best midfielder in Europe at the minute. I mean, Jean Neves. there are so many dark horses. Spain, the likes of Brazil and Argentina in this climate are going to thrive. Argentina might have a slightly ageing Lionel Messi, but they just know how to do well in these tournaments. It's so difficult to call, but as ever, I'm putting my heart on my sleeve and I'm back in England because we too have a hardened world-class squad. But the difficulty is going to be the semi-final, Ian. I'm not going to go on record saying it'd be a breeze in the final because it won't be, but I back them to win a final if they get there.
We've got just a final point, a slight problem at home in my house. My 12-year-old is a City fan. I won't even bore you with how that happened.
That's devastating.
So, but he came to the Cup final with me and had to sit in the Chelsea end. So that, yes, it compromised him all the way. He did well. He politely claps along. It was all right. He did okay. Unfortunately, because his granddad is Scottish. He's no longer alive, but the Scottish family sent him down a Scottish shirt to wear throughout the World Cup. Now, do I A, ban him from wearing it? Do I B, seek to have him adopted? It's got to be one of the two, Max. And it's down to you to decide.
yeah, text in now. Oh, you can't let him wear it. It's your household. You cannot let him wear it. Buy him a nicer England shirt with a better player on the back.
Yeah.
It might be more expensive, but so it should be.
Absolutely bang on. Good work. Max, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Max
care.
Scott with us from talkSPORT. Looking ahead, it's going to be such an exciting summer as well. Whatever way you slice it, this is going to be a beautiful, beautiful World Cup, and it's coming your way courtesy of talkSPORT, of course. Now, a reminder that the World Cup is almost here. It's thanks to Adidas, of course, the tournament's official match ball supplier, that our friends at talkSPORT are giving you the chance to actually be there. Adidas is sending you and a friend to Dallas to see England, Croatia live June 17th. Return flights, accommodation, spending money, tickets, your very own Adidas official match ball tri-onder. You can be at England's first game, FIFA World Cup 2026, one of the world's best stadiums as well. And this is how you can enter.
Get ready for that winning feeling. For your chance to win, head to talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Texts and online entries cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 1st of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. See full terms and conditions at talksport.com/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. Full T's and C's at win.talk.tv.
When conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This in from Kieran. He says Foden has never played well for England ever. He also says, tell Max, your reporter, that Cole Palmer and Phil Foden do not deserve to go due to their terrible, inconsistent performances this season. Well, Cole Palmer, I can speak a little bit for, didn't play for quite a lot of the first part of the season. Because of injury, essentially. Overworked player, a gifted player, but I'm not that, so I tend to agree with Kieran. I'm not that surprised that he's not there. We haven't done the Voice of Doom, by the way, to find out if we've got a winner. It was over an hour ago, around about an hour ago, we played you this voice.
In how we think about...
Very simple request to try and tell us who it is. These were some of the guesses. Kim Ledbetter, Emily Thornberry, Maria Miller, Carla Denyer, Layla Cunningham. None of those. Caroline Flint, no. Ellie Reeves, no. Nus Ghani, no. Julia Lopez, it is not. Esther McVeigh, no. Also. Sarah Jones, it is not. Louise Mensch. Louise Mensch. Let's hear that voice again.
In how we think about...
It is not. Which means it rolls over to, in fact, because I'm not even here next week. I'm on breakfast next week for 5 days because Jezza is in jail. So no, he's not. He's on holiday. He's on holiday. I say that because he's glamping, which if you've ever done it, and I have, it's jail. Because somebody thought a white tent is a good idea. Yeah, it's a great idea until 4 a.m. in the morning when you're in a white tent. You might as well just be sleeping literally on the sun. Ludicrous. So it returns in just over a week's time, the Voice of Doom. Let's go to Tim in Worthing. Back to the cost of living debate we began with. Tim, what have you got for us?
Yeah, hi Ian.
Hiya.
I'm actually stuck on the M25 at the moment, so I'm very
nice.
Yeah, it is nice. So in all the conversations this afternoon, Nick, I thought he especially brave coming on speaking. Dan, and there was another gentleman.
Yeah.
Was it Rick? They all nailed it. They all really. But the one thing that I often feel gets overlooked, and I think is what we've lost as a society and as people, is this sense of personal responsibility. And if everybody live their own life with that sense of personal responsibility, and the people who work in the civil service and the politicians and those in government and those in cabinet, when they start to realise that they should be responsible for their actions, then perhaps they'll take their decision making a little bit more seriously. And once we get a society where government gives us a structure in which we can live practicing responsibility for ourselves, and where that structure encourages personal responsibility, perhaps then we'll get back to where we used to be. But until that happens, I can't see that kind of, in a way, and you talk about the Voice of Doom, I think as a nation we are kind of doomed, and I feel like that now.
Do you think, but is there a sense, Tim, that you think give it 5 years and we'll be out of it, or do you think we're in for the long haul of the doom?
No, it's a generational thing. So
yeah.
I've now got a young grandson. I'm going to bring him up the way I was brought up and with my beliefs,
sure.
Personal responsibility.
Yeah,
that's how hopefully he's going to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
It's a generational thing. So until we start changing the education system that purports responsibility for self, and through all of these structures, because I think at heart that's where we are lost. My father's generation fought in the Second World War.
Yeah.
I'm a veteran. It's that sense of self-discipline, self-responsibility.
I agree totally. Listen, you couldn't be more bang on, Tim. Listen, have a great week. I've got to move because of the time. Kevin O'Sullivan's here as well. Tim, thank you. Tim in Worthing. Cracking call from him. We've had great calls this afternoon. Only on this station, Kevin O'Sullivan, do we get common sense calls.
Oh, yeah, the callers are usually the most sensible people we have on the
without
show.
any doubt.
They're certainly much more sensible than most of the presenters. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. That's fair enough.
Well, very pleased to say that in about 20 minutes or so we're going to be joined by the bombshell royal author Andrew Lowney. to discuss this latest development on the former Prince Andrew front. This is serious. This is really... The police are making it very clear that he's now being investigated for sex offences, and they've made sure in their statement they said this is a very significant investigation, and they're already talking to the Crown Prosecution Service. Now, we mustn't prejudge the outcome of that, but if he gets charged and he gets prosecuted and he gets found guilty, I'm afraid the King's brother's going to jail, which will be extraordinary. So this has become, this pompous oaths, nefarious life has turned into an existential problem for the royal family.
That's extraordinary.
I mean, the royal family are in serious trouble. It's not their fault. Well, it may be their fault to an extent because they've indulged this idiot.
Sure.
But this is a major situation, obviously. Also got Sarah Poshin on in a minute. We'll ask her all about what's going on in Makerfield, of course. And old Bridget Phillipson, I mean, you know, she said she